Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I request everyone to please put your cameras on and unmute your mic. Good morning, all Lechner. Sorry. How are you, sir?
Sorry?
How are you?
Fine. No, I catch the cold, so my voice is a little bit strange today.
No issue, sir. No issue. Get well soon. Get well soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Horst Lechner. I'm a student of the University of Latvia in Riga. But I'm an Austrian, and as you can see, I'm a quite old guy, and I'm doing this just for keeping my brain a little bit in working condition. So yeah, and yeah, for me, it's the first presentation in such an international conference because this is part of the doctoral thesis I'm doing. So there you have to do several publications, and this is my first trial.
That's really nice. That's really nice to know. Thank you. Thank you for the information. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Saloni Walia.
Hello, good morning.
Please put your camera on.
Yeah.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Saloni Walia. I'm a third year PhD scholar at IIT Jammu in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. So I'm working on trans narratives. So I'm in the process of writing my second chapter for now.
Okay,
and it's very wonderful to see all of you here. It's 12 p.m. here in India. Oh. For others who are joining from other parts of the world.
Yes. Okay, so hello, I'm Dr. Kalpata Dimri. Hello. Am I audible to you, ma'am? Ma'am, your voice is not coming. I request everyone, please put your cameras on. Hello, ma'am, Dr. Vibha Joshi.
Very good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Because I'm in Paris, that's why here it is morning, 7:37 time. Yeah.
Good morning. How are you?
To join this meeting since 6:30 because the earlier time was given at 6:30. I'm fine. I'm Vibha Joshi, professor in economics in Banaras Hindu University at Varanasi.
Thank you.
I have come to join this conference because it gives me immense pleasure to be in Paris and to talk to the people who are really associated with this research association.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the kind words. We are so glad to have you all here. Let other people join the conference. Hello, ma'am, Sohini Zahid Siddiqui. I request you please put your camera on. Please unmute your mic, ma'am.
I'm so sorry. Actually, I'm in the hotel at the Paris and it's very cold, so I'm also got sick. Okay. So that's one of the reasons I was just trying to figure out where to turn on the light and all that. There is one other person in the Paris as well. Someone also introduced just now. I was hearing, but I was just figuring it out to turn it on. Okay. So my name is Sohini Zahid Siddiqui, and I am a PhD scholar at Technical University of Berlin. And this is my second year of my PhD program. And today I'm going to present a paper which is related to my PhD thesis.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the information, ma'am. It was really nice to see you here.
Thank you.
I request everyone to please rename your Zoom account. So it will be easy to recognize your original name ID. Hello, ma'am Nitri. How are you?
Yeah, good, very good. Thank you.
I request you to please put your camera on.
Okay, wait. I just
Yes. How are you, ma'am?
good, very good. I'm just arrived. Sorry,
Okay, okay.
I was in Malaysia yesterday,
What's the
but I
weather
live.
here?
Yeah.
What's the weather in Malaysia right now?
No. I was in Malaysia for 2 days. I was about to join.
Okay.
But I got the reschedule for today, so I already in Indonesia. Just arrived last night.
Yes, so thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So everyone has joined the conference and some people are joining the conference. So shall we start?
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Catherine. How are you?
Hello. It seems not very well because I had very bad experience to come Paris, but never mind.
Okay.
Hello, my greetings, all of the participants, and I'm glad to meet you by the Zoom, and I hope we will have fruitful day today. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for sharing information, and we are so glad to have you to see you here. And okay, so everyone has joined the conference. Shall we start? Yes. Okay, so let's start with our today's conference. Now I would like to share So I would like to welcome you all to the Eurasia Research Online Live International Conference, 25th November 2022. So we are so glad to have these distinguished participants with us. Ma'am Victoria from Philippines, Ma'am Sohini from Germany, Ma'am Saloni from India, Sir Tharanga from Sri Lanka, Sir David from USA, and Ma'am Vibha Joshi from India, and Ma'am Kalplata from India, and Ekaterine from Georgia. Sir Abhinav Dixit from India, Ma'am Ankita Dixit from India, Ma'am Farzaneh from Germany, Ma'am Nihal from Algeria, Sir Hoste from Latvia, Susan from United States, Ma'am Nitri from Indonesia, Ma'am Marika from Georgia. Today, we have participants and presentations from 9 countries around the world, and that are Germany, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, USA, Georgia, Algeria, Latvia, India, and Indonesia. We are broadcasting this conference on Facebook Live on multiple pages of Eurasia Research. The links for the live sessions are shared in the chat box. Please allow me a moment to introduce Eurasia Research in a nutshell. With over more than 1 million satisfied members and associations spread across the globe, Eurasia Research is a scholarly association who have been working for nearly a decade. Eurasia Research has organized several successful international conferences, workshops, and training programs at various reputed institutions and grant venues. Eurasia has been tirelessly working for research world and have not stopped their endeavors during COVID era and have presented a research community with online platform which was safe and convenient method to continue their passion. We are an international community of researchers, practitioners, students, and educationists who aim to bring together worldwide researchers and professionals, encourage intellectual development, and to create opportunities for networking and collaboration. These objectives are achieved through academic networking, meetings, conferences, workshops, projects, research publications, academic awards, and scholarship. We provide scholarship to deserving candidates to promote students and research scholars to participate in the international conference. Young Researcher Scholarship is provided in the form of a full registration fee waiver. We have vast experience of publishing papers for more than 7 years. Our associated journals publish original papers, review papers, conceptual framework, analytical and simulation model, case studies, empirical research, technical notes, and book reviews. We cater more than 30 plus themes in the area of teaching and education and have registered IISN and have followed Rion indexing, Google Scholar, Crosscheck, Authenticate, Crossref, the Keepers Registry, Script, Portico, Road, Directory of Open Access Scholarly Resources, OAI, PMH, Registered Data Provider, PKB Index. We will soon be applying for Scopus 2. We have a wide network of 100 plus internationally acclaimed keynotes across the globe who have shared their knowledge and guidance with our participants with open hands. We have large number of committee members and advisors who support us, guide us through their expert opinions and decision-making capabilities. We could not have thought of reaching here without them. We also encourage our participants to connect with more than 50K plus followers on our social media platform, where they can share their research and interests. I request everyone to please join our Facebook group and be a part of the discussions by researchers and academicians. We have several collaborations with universities and colleges and institutes to better serve all interested and like-minded intellectuals. With great enthusiasm and pride, we would like to announce our latest project, which is Terra Fellow Program in Education. The program offers an opportunity to learn the key concepts and latest trends in the teaching industry from the academic stalwarts. We would like to share some of our past participant experience with you. Thank you for your patience and valuable time moving forward with the conference. So today I'm your host, Ms. Vartika Jain from Eurasia Research. So let's welcome our SSRA President, Associate Professor Marek Matinjan, Department of Entrepreneurship and Industrial Policy, Faculty of Management, University of Lodz, Poland. Let's see what he wants to share with us.
Hello everyone, my name is Marek Matejun, originally associated with the University of Łódź, Poland. I am the president of Social Science and Humanities Research Association. On behalf of my colleagues, advisory board and our members, it is a pleasure and an honor to welcome you to our international community. Social Science and Humanities Research Association, SSHRA, is promoted by Eurasia Research and aims to bring together worldwide researchers and professionals, encourage intellectual development, and create opportunities for networking and scientific collaboration in the field of social science and humanities. These objectives are achieved through academic networking, meetings, workshops, projects, scientific publication, academic awards, and scholarships. We create wonderful opportunities for sharing knowledge, research results, and discussion at our interdisciplinary conferences organized in Asia, Europe, and Africa, International Conference on Social Science and Humanities, as well as at the International Conference on Business, Economics, Language, Law and Psychology. We closely cooperate with internationally recognized universities and research organizations as our institutional partners. For our members, we offer inspiring scientific events, team-building activities, strong social media platform for networking, young researcher scholarships, as well as opportunities for publications in international journals. The driving force behind our success is the diversity of members and international advisory board who provide inspiration, ideas, efforts, and drive collaborations. Scholars, researchers, professionals, academic teachers, and students are warmly invited to become a member of SSHRA and join our ever-growing network working for the benefit of research and society with a spirit of knowledge sharing, mutual respect, and growth. Following these values, we kindly invite you to join our community and collaboration with us. As a member of SSHRA, you will be a part of progressive, comprehensive research association and play an absolutely essential role in helping us to enrich our scientific activities, maintain our long-standing commitment to the development of social science and humanities, and enhance our global impact. Thank you, and welcome to SSHRA International Community. Connect, collaborate, and co-create an outstanding future with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful words. So let's move on to the conference. Now let's welcome our next eminent speaker, Dr. Y. Samuel P. Wesley, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of History at Srimati Chandibai Mahatman Manuskhani College, Ulhasnagar, India. Let's see what he wants to share with us.
My name is Dr. Samuel Wesley. So I'm the Associate Professor and Head of the Department of History at Srimati CHM College, that is in India. And my PhD thesis was on women's studies. So I specialize in gender studies and theological history. So I completed my PhD on women's studies and minor research projects on theological history. So that is my academic profile. So I'm heading the department. I'm in charge of foundation course also and coordinator for travel and tourism in the college. Physical presence and attending offline does make a big difference. But in COVID period, social distancing had to be maintained. So virtual platform was a very good alternative to continue research, to attend a conference, to interact with diverse speakers, to interact with them and just get a chance to see their research. So it was a good online experience. It was a good alternative. The virtual platform was a good alternative.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opinion, sir. Now, would you like to suggest or encourage your friends or family to attend the conference of Eurasia Research?
Yes, definitely, madam. Eurasia Research conference was very well organized, very prompt, right from the beginning. Yes, yourself and all the organizers and Dr. Flora Charles was very prompt in her communication right from the beginning. And I had the opportunity of attending and listening to President Dr. Marek Matayun and many others there from the international fraternity. Definitely, I would encourage to attend the Eurasia conferences, especially those who cannot travel, women or the aged senior citizens, or those are multiple responsibilities. The online Eurasia conferences are very well organized. Definitely, I will encourage my friends to and colleagues to attend this conference. Eurasia Research conference was very well organized, very prompt, right from the beginning. Yes, yourself and all the organizers and Dr. Flora Charles was very prompt in her communication right from the beginning. And I had the opportunity of attending and listening to President Dr. Marek Matayun and many others there from the international fraternity. Definitely, I would encourage to attend the Eurasia conferences, especially those who cannot travel, women or the aged senior citizens, or those are multiple responsibilities. The online Eurasia conferences are very well organized. Definitely, I will encourage my friends to and colleagues to attend this conference. It was very well organized, and right from the beginning, communication was very prompt. Everything was on time, started on time. The resources were given on time, information was given on time, and there was no delay or no lag, and very well organized. I got a chance to interact with the international fraternity and get a chance to see their research as well. Very enriching experience. So that is my positive feedback of the conference.
Thank you.
I wish you the same. Good day.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, Sir Wesley, for the wonderful words. We are so glad to have you as our keynote speaker. Now, let's move on to the conference. So let's welcome our next eminent speaker, Associate Professor Katalin Liptek, PhD in Economics, Associate Professor, Head of Department, YSD, University of Missolc, Faculty of Economics, Department of Labor Market and Employment Policy, Missolc, Hungary. Now let's see what she wants to share with us.
Bye.
Good morning. My name is Katalin Liptek. I am an associate professor and head of department and vice dean for education at the Faculty of Economics, University of Miskolc in Hungary. I am an economist, but I have a juris degree. My research field are regional labor market processes, regional economics, and sometimes I deal with small labor law. I am currently researching the evaluation and development of the labor market and the changing labor market processes, as well as the social and solidarity economies. I am a member of the Hungarian Regional Science Association. I am a member of the editorial board of North Hungarian Strategic Booklet and editor-in-chief of Socialis series in Social Science Journal. I received yesterday 3 years of research scholarship from the Hungarian Science Academy called Bógai János Research Scholarship, so I am now very happy. I believe that COVID pandemic in 2020 and last year has changed our lives in many ways. Online conferences has become more and more popular and have used ever since. Adapting to this new environment is a key element, I think. I remember attending my first online conference in spring in 2020. I was very nervous about the technical conditions. It was a very strange situation for me. It was strange to give a presentation without seeing the faces and the reactions of the researchers. I soon got over that, and the following conferences didn't cause such excitement. I had to get used to the new environment. I think that Eurasia Research conferences has always been very easy to manage on Zoom platform. Perhaps coffee break discussions cannot replace by online conferences, but the team activity discussion you have introduced has tried to make up for this. I think it was a great. There are many advantages to online conferencing. For those who don't like to travel so much, it's a great option. Not to mention the time factor. I spend half of my day at an online conference, for example, in Asia or in America, and the afternoon with my Hungarian students. This is, I think it's perfect. And including travel, it would take several days. It's a joke to tell my family after an online conference that the flight came quickly, so I back home again. But of course, I wasn't on the plane that day. I joined online to the conference. I'm happy to recommend and encourage my younger colleagues to participate in online conferences, as presenting results is an important part of academic life. Fortunately, my colleagues are also very active, so we have participated in dozens of online conferences over the past years, and we enjoyed it very. The conferences you organize always follow a very precise and punctual schedule. There are no delays and no overlong participant presentation. Everyone is very disciplined and attentive to the framework. And as I mentioned before, I think team activity is a great idea, and you always choose topics that are interesting for everyone, great less of discipline, and that everyone can contribute to. And they have a good atmosphere at your conferences. I enjoyed always.
Thank you, Ma'am Katalin, for the wonderful words. We are so glad to have you as our eminent speaker. Now let's move on. So our today's conference schedule is session 1 is for keynote talk, session 2 is for team activity and photo session, and session 3 is for technical talk. Okay, so I request everyone to please rename your Zoom account with your full name in English. This will help us to record your presence. You may ask your questions related to the presentation in the chat section while the presentations are going on. All the certificates, receipts, and proceedings will be sent to the participants within a week on their mail ID. The proceedings will include all the full papers and abstract accepted for the conference. Moving ahead with the publication process, the publication process starts once the registration process is complete. The author needs to send their papers, consent forms, and review details on the email ID convener@eurasiaresearch.info. The review reports will be sent to the author once the review process is over. The final stage of publication starts after receiving the revised papers from the authors. Please note that publication process takes around 50 days after the conference date if all the editorial guidelines are followed within the given deadlines. So now let's welcome our first keynote speaker for the conference, Dr. Ma Victoria C. Magion, researcher, author, curriculum writer, STEM teacher, professional lecturer, formatter, Teta Senior High School, Department ED Result, Philippines. And her topic is cognitive reframing as one strategy to help students under stress and anxiety. Dr. Ma Victoria Cassillo Magion is a formatter under the Great Lighthouse Foundation, a professional lecturer, author of journal articles and such as Learning Mathematics, Differentiated Instructions in the Philippines. First one is Learning Mathematics and Differentiated Instructions in the Philippines, a phenomenographical study on struggles and successes of grade 7 students. Second, a phenomenographical study on struggles and successes of grade 7 students. Third, expectations versus reality, a sentiment analysis of students' experience on distance learning. Fourth one is the road less taken, differentiated instructions as practiced by grade 7 teachers in the Philippines. Fifth one, supplementary values, saturated program among students in the Philippines. Student stance and value. Sixth, technological adaptation of teachers and students under the learning continuity plan. A case of one school in the Philippines. 7. Grade 7 mathematics textbooks differentiated in the Philippines, illusion or reality, and many more. A book author such as organization and management for senior high school under Cleve Publishing House and a peer review of international journal articles. She is also a discussant of various topics, both local and in international forum as a keynote speaker at 26th International Conference on Teaching, Education, Learning. Nanyang Technological University, Nanyang Executive Center, Singapore. Online keynote speaker in Port Singapore. International Conference on Social Science and Humanities, 3rd and 4th November 2020. 9th Singapore International Conference on Social Science, 11th Singapore Conference on Social Science and Humanities. She is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Mathematics, Master of Arts in Education, major in Educational Management, and Doctor of Education Manager in Curriculum Instruction. At present, she is faculty teaching practical research, one or two capstone inquiries and capstone immersion and other related projects, and guidance designee of Tete Senior High University Division of Results. She is Result Learning Resource Evaluator and Education and Subprofessor. Since 2017, engagements such as in 2021, a conformance reviewer of Homeroom Guidance Program Module Regional Lab. Now let's see what she wants to share with us.
Good day everyone, I'm Dr. Maria Victoria Castillo Magayon, and today I'm going to discuss about cognitive reframing as one strategy to help students under stress and anxiety. According to John F. Kennedy, change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or to the present are certain to miss the future. And also, according to Lao Tzu, life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward to whatever way they like. Now, the adverse effect of pandemic to our students are more on mental issues or concern, anxiety, depression, such like that. Now, according to reversal theory is the psychological framework that focuses on the relationship between motivation and emotion, and which focuses on the dynamic aspects of our personalities. A core message of reversal theory is that it is possible for individuals to reverse the ways they are feeling and their approach to situation by reframing. Okay. Reframing. What is cognitive reframing? Cognitive reframing is a technique used to shift your mindset so you're able to look at a situation, person, or relationship from a slightly different perspective. The essential idea behind reframing is that the frame through which a person views a situation determines their point of view. When that frame is shifted, the meaning changes, and thinking and behavior often change along with it. Now, what is the use or uses of cognitive reframing? Cognitive reframing can be useful for people who are experiencing mental health condition, but it can also be helpful for improving overall mental well-being. Using cognitive reframing can help you become more positive and resilient in the face of life changes. Cognitive reframing has been proven effective to help minimize anxiety and depression and enhance quality of life during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, how reframing works. Sometimes we are in the situation that our students are seeking for an advice or counseling. We know the fact that every teacher is a counselor. Teachers or counselors can use this simple technique, how cognitive reframing help our student by simply use this technique or simply suggesting these techniques to our student. Number one, let us suggest that thinking has a pattern. So the first step in reframing is to educate your students' mind setting about these negative thinking patterns that may greatly increase their stress level. So we need to suggest to them that they should shift their thinking patterns. Next is to be vigilant on their thoughts, to catch themselves in a situation wherein they are into a negative and stress-inducing pattern of thinking. So students we should suggest that they should be vigilant or aware when those negative thoughts come in their mind. Next, when they're already recognizing and aware that these negative thoughts come in, the next is to replace those thoughts with more positive thoughts. So training them to make negative thoughts, ignoring negative thoughts, and then replacing it into a positive thoughts. Next, last is to challenge their thoughts. As they notice the negative thoughts, as they are aware, as they are already aware that they can shift their negative thoughts into a positive one, so they should take action. They should challenge themselves. Thus, challenge themselves to create, to make action on uh, eliminating negative thoughts and replacing it into a positive one. Next is so doing those strategy, actually it's all in the mind. It is not a trick but a strategy. So according to Dr. Scott, when you're looking at something negative, see if you can change your self-talk to use less strong, less negative emotion. When you're looking at a potentially stressful situation, see if you can view it as a challenge versus a threat. Look for the gift in each situation and see if you can see your stressors on the more positive age of reality. See them in a way that still fits the facts of your situation, but that is less negative and more optimistic and positive. Next, as teachers, let us help our students shift their mindset. If they are experiences negative thoughts about the implementation of the face-to-face classes, as we know that in every transition there is always pain, there is always challenge that let us help them, let us reshape their minds and thoughts to appreciate the beauty of the face-to-face classes, for for them to realize that uh, face-to-face classes create more engagement between the teacher and the students, where in teaching and learning process be more meaningful in the face-to-face classes. Let us let us use this strategy to reshape uh, the mindset of those students that are suffering or having a negative thoughts about the face-to-face classes. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am Victoria, for the wonderful presentation. We are so glad to have you as our keynote speaker. Now let's move on to the next. So today's team activity and photo session, let's proceed towards our team building activity. Sometimes we miss the opportunity of connection, linkage with fellow participants of the conference. This team activities encourage interaction among all the participants. One by one, we will share the views and solutions on the topic of discussion, and we will be conducting a photo session during the same. So today's topic of discussion is how important is mental health.
Good We all have mental health. It is just as important as physical health. It is not only about mental illness or mental disorders. This is just one part of a bigger picture. It's best to think about mental health as being on a continuum, rather than people being either mentally ill or mentally well. We are all on the continuum, and we move up and down according to factors such as our genetic makeup and upbringing, our life circumstances, and the stresses we are under. At one end of the continuum, we have mental disorders, like depression or anxiety. And at the other end, we have states of positive mental health, when we're thriving, content, and fulfilled. The aim of mental health interventions is to move people up the continuum so that they're able to reach their full potential and live satisfying lives. The World Health Organization describes mental health as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Being mentally healthy means being resilient and able to cope with difficult times, feeling in control, being confident, feeling good about yourself, managing and expressing your emotions, building and maintaining good relationships. We all experience periods when we feel stressed, worried, anxious, sad, afraid, or angry. These are all normal emotions. However, when these emotions become severe enough that it interferes with a person's ability to function daily, and these feelings become persistent over time, then it can develop into a mental health problem. There are many different types of mental disorders. When left untreated, mental disorders can be chronic and long-lasting, and are associated with increased disability. They significantly have an impact on daily functioning and frequently interfere with family, social, and work responsibilities. Fortunately, there are effective treatments and evidence-based interventions available that aim to help individuals understand and cope with symptoms of mental illness. However, very few people with mental disorders access existing treatment services. This may be due to barriers such as the stigma attached to seeking help, the lack of understanding of mental health problems, uncertainty of how to get help, or the fear of disclosing mental health problems. Research shows that stigma remains one of the biggest factors preventing people from seeking help early for their mental health problems and getting the appropriate support they need. It is important to acknowledge that we all have mental health and have a personal responsibility to learn how we can improve and maintain our well-being in order to lead meaningful and satisfying lives.
So this is the topic of discussion. I will like to share the next. So this is the topic of the discussion. So anybody has any views or points on the today's topic of discussion? Anyone wants to share their own views?
May I start?
Yes, Sam, please.
Yes. Actually, everyone understands that mental health is very important, as well as the physical health is very important. But my main concern is because the people are now connected from throughout the world. So I just want to know that in education institutions in your home countries, are there any steps taken in education institutions to make sure that the mental health, proper guidance to the mental health has been provided or not? I am originally from Pakistan, but for the past 2 years I'm in Germany, and I have seen a huge difference in our education systems in Pakistan and in Germany. So I just want to know that what is the current situation in other countries? Like in your countries, in your home countries, are there any counselors, other psychologists or educationists are working to make sure that the children are holistically improving, not only in terms of the physical or the cognitive development, but also their mental health issues are addressed? So this is my one question from everyone. So I think I am just initiating this discussion.
Okay, so please, everyone wants to share. Ma'am Saloni, you wants to share something? You can add your points. What
Yeah, just a general point that mental health, the questions of mental health became very important, especially the pandemic
I think there is some connection issue.
in India. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, now you're audible.
Okay. The question of mental health actually became very important during the pandemic time when we were in lockdown, we were confined to our homes. So I realized that most of the interaction we were having, they were webinars. So we were connected to everybody virtually. So we realized that the in-person contact or physical contact is so important to feel normal. And it is not a very big thing, but maybe during pandemic, the realization hit us more. And usually I'm a text or a chat person, but I realized that because I wanted to see the other people, so I shifted to video calling, if not meeting in person. So that human interaction or to feel connected to each other and to see the other person physically became so important for my mental health. And I also realized that as far as this is concerned, we need to take care of our mental health on our own and depend less on other people because there are limitations. So, like self care, I mean, I started reading articles and videos, how to enhance it, and questions on differences between sympathy and empathy. Sometimes people want to share what is happening in their lives, but if mental health is important, then you also need to draw boundaries, that after a certain point you don't need to, you are somebody's friend, but you don't want to hear their problems every time, because there has to be a boundary, and sometimes it disturbs you. So I think these are small points, these are very small realizations from my own experience.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the information. Thank you, ma'am Sohini. Thank you, ma'am Saloni, for the wonderful information. Anyone wants to share some? Yes, ma'am, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
I would like.
Okay.
Yeah, my voice is audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to add something which has been said by Sohni, and the other girl. Actually, mental health is a serious problem these days, because we know that we are going through this pandemic time, and we are also going through this very crucial time at the national level, international level, and also at the personal level. We are actually in conflict with internal and external personality, and all these things are really increasing this mental stress. And we all know that we are celebrating this World Mental Health Day on 10th of October internationally, and there are so many things which we can do for those people and for ourselves, because we don't know when we are going to indulge in that trap of mental illness, because continuously we are facing the stress in our life, we are facing the stress in our family, we are facing that stress in our workplace, and we are facing the stress at global level. So there is need to understand the actual problem, which is known as mental illness, because there is difference between mental illness and there is difference between mental disturbances, right? Sometimes we think that we are just fit, we are just going through this stress and we will come back with it, but sometimes this continuous stress leads us to that mental illness. So I think that my paper, which is on the reframing of education, and I think when we talk about education and health, we know that these two things are very are the basic components of well-being of human. And when we talk about health, this is not the physical health only, this is the mental health also. So for mental health, there is need to be strong from within, because if we can learn to understand ourselves, if we can learn to understand ourselves in a wider sense, our relation with others, our relation with nature, and if uh, we can understand this properly, then perhaps there will be no stress like that which we are feeling in these days. So we should, I think we should go towards spirituality, not for that materialistic world, but there must be inculcation of some spiritual education, and the education should be changed. And if we can do this, most probably we will be able to face these challenges which we are facing in this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful information. Okay, so ma'am Catherine, you want to share something? Thank you for your patience. Ma'am Catherine, would you like to share something? So let's move on to the conference. So now let's welcome our first presenter for the conference, Sohani Siddiqui, Department of Educational Psychology, Technische University Berlin, Germany. And her topic is bullying prevalence in Pakistan's educational institutes and recommendations for tailored interventions, preclusion to the framework for a teacher-led anti-bullying intervention. You may see her abstract from here. Now let's see what she wants to share with us.
Good morning, one and all present here. My name is Saloni Walia. I am a third year PhD scholar from
Narvik's take
of Berlin. As a first step, I would like to thank 4th Paris International Conference on Social Science and Humanities for accepting my research for presentation. This presentation is part of my PhD thesis, where I am working to develop an anti-bullying intervention designed for the professional development of teachers. This intervention is called Samanjana Anti-Bullying Intervention, and this presentation is based on the results of the survey we conducted before designing this intervention. The topic of my today's presentation is bullying prevalence in Pakistan's educational institutes and recommendations for tailored intervention, preclusion to the framework for teacher-led anti-bullying intervention. So I have already introduced myself. My name is Soni Siddiqui or Soni Zahid Siddiqui, and I'm a PhD scholar at Technical University of Berlin. And this project is supervised by Dr. Anya Schulz-Krambus, who is also an author of this presentation, and she is helping me to develop this intervention design. She is a department head at Education Psychology Technical University of Berlin. So let's quickly go through the contents of the presentation. I will start with the introduction. After that, I'm just going to briefly introduce what basically bullying is, how can we define bullying, and what are the different forms of the bullying. Then we are going to just look at the literature review. Then I'm going to show what were the results of the baseline need assessment, or what were the results of the study I conducted before starting designing this intervention design. And after that, I will be discussing recommendations based on the results. And at last, there will be a small overview of the strength and limitation of this study. So let's start with the introduction of the presentation. So as I have already explained you that this paper or this presentation is basically a baseline need assessment that we did before designing anti-bullying intervention for teachers in Pakistan. The main purpose of this baseline need assessment was to find out the stratum of traditional bullying and cyberbullying and their consequences in Pakistan education system. I also want to mention that the strength of this baseline survey was that the data was collected from teachers instead of the students, as most of the previous researchers did. So which enabled researchers to identify perceptions and experience of teachers in education settings, as well as what they are expecting from the anti-bullying intervention that we are designing for them. So this baseline need assessment is basically to highlight all the results that help us to identify where more focus is needed and what the teachers are expecting from this anti-bullying intervention. So let's start with the basic concept of the bullying. Bullying is basically an aggressive behavior with repeated intentions to afflict individuals with physical, emotional and mental means, and is usually resulted from power imbalance. Remember one thing, that in power imbalance means that there is always a difference of power between a bullying perpetrator and a victimized child. This power imbalance can be in the form of the physical strength, it can be in the form of the social acceptance or financial situation. So remember one thing, that always a perpetrator is stronger than a victimized child, and that's why we normally recommend or use the word power imbalance to show the difference between a perpetrator and a victimized student or child. So bullying is further divided or classified into traditional bullying. Traditional bullying can be in the form of the physical bullying, hitting, kicking, tripping, or even destroying someone's properties under the category of physical bullying. The another traditional form of the bullying is verbal bullying, which refers towards the use of the abusive language or mimicking unkindly towards anyone, or using a slang language. It's all up under the category of verbal bullying. There is one other form of the bullying, we call it emotional or social bullying, and this type of a bullying is common whenever a perpetrator is not ready to reveal his identity. In this type of the bullying, usually the main purpose is to spoil the reputation of the student or a child, and it is usually done by spreading rumors about the child, by spreading lies about the child. So traditional bullying can be in the form of the physical, verbal or emotional bullying. However, cyberbullying can be in the form of the verbal bullying or emotional bullying. So let's just quickly go through that what the review of the literature is saying. Remember one thing, that in this review we are going to talk about the status of the bullying and cyberbullying in Pakistan, but all these studies were conducted are based on the self-reports, and the data was collected from the students. So in most of the study, it has already been identified that bullying and cyberbullying are routine practices in Pakistan education institutions and have affected the physical, emotional and mental health of the students. It is also recommended by many researchers to build support centers in academic settings to deal with the bullying and cyberbullying situation and to implement anti-bullying intervention. It is very important to understand that interventions which are designed to control the cyberbullying and its consequences are substandard so far in Pakistan's context. So there is a need that some anti-bullying intervention should be designed to control the bullying, traditional bullying and cyberbullying in Pakistan education institutions. So now we are going to talk about the research methodology. It is a quantitative study with a cross-sectional survey. Based on the cross-sectional survey, the instrument that we have used to get the information about the cyberbullying, social bullying, verbal bullying and physical bullying is actually the mix of the questionnaires which have taken from the different studies. For cyberbullying, we use the cyber victimization questionnaire. For social bullying, we use a questionnaire developed by our dog Brewer, and it was extracted from his thesis, from his PhD thesis. For verbal bullying, we took out the questions from Dogwood, Zhu et al. And Gonzalez, Carbera et al. Questionnaire. For physical bullying, the questions were taken from the Mare, Zhu and Gonzalez, Carbera et al. Research paper. In addition to that, we also asked some questions from the teachers to know about their opinion and what they're expecting from the anti-bullying intervention design. I also want to mention that a team of researchers, including the educationists and psychologists from Department of Education and Psychology at the Technical University of Berlin, reviewed and established the content validity of the questionnaires after these questions were adapted from various questionnaires. So content validity was also established before starting with the data collection process. Sample were the educators. Approximately 454 teachers responded to the questionnaire, which was sent in the form of a Google Forms, and the sampling technique was a convenient sampling technique. Now, we're just quickly going to talk about the demographic of the participants. So most of the participants in this study were from the secondary education institutions or who were teaching the grades from 6 to 10 or O levels. So we have the 41% of the participants from the secondary level of education. When we discuss about the institutional settings, we found that approximately 80% of the teachers' education institutions were in urban cities, or you can say in metropolis cities. And when we asked about the institutional setting, that whether the school was a government-run public school or a private school, then we found that most of the teachers were from the private school sectors. Now, after finalizing and establishing content validity, we run the factor analysis for the questionnaire by using SPSS version 27 and MS version 24. And in the final questionnaire, we left with the 13 items for the cyberbullying, 9 items for the social bullying, 7 items for the verbal bullying, and 7 items for the physical bullying. And reliability and average variance extracted, which is used to establish the construct validity, was also in an acceptable range. We also checked the model fitness criteria, and in this study, all the criteria for the model fitness were, or most of the model fitness criteria were met, and we can say that the model was fit to analyze and to test the hypothesis. Now I'm moving on towards the results of the baseline need assessment. So you can see from this graph, and it's indicated that most participants agreed that there is a prevalence of emotional and verbal bullying, which is inclined more towards the right hand side. You can see that, and which is inclined more towards the right hand side, and the teachers have encountered more social and verbal bullying incidents as compared to the physical and cyberbullying. So when we were matching it with the literature review, we found that in most of the studies where the data was collected from the students were reporting that the cyberbullying is also very common, as well as the traditional bullying is also very common. But when we get the data from the teachers, the cyberbullying, according to their opinion, the cyberbullying is not very common. So from here we concluded that might be the teachers are not experiencing it, or maybe they are unable to identify it, or maybe they are not very active on all the social media networks where the students are involved in the cyberbullying. So based on this assumption, or based on this conclusion, we finally decided that in our intervention design, the initial first 2 modules will only and only based on the identifications of the behaviors, where teachers will be trained to identify perpetrators' behaviors and victimized child behavior. We also have a Pearson correlation results, and from this Pearson correlation results, we found that whenever a level of teaching is increasing, the physical bullying is decreasing. It means that physical bullying is more prevalent in primary schools than in higher education institutions. The another conclusion was that wherever the cyberbullying was common, the verbal, physical, and emotional bullying was also common among those institutions. So based on this, we decided that our intervention design will have the components to handle or to encounter both cyberbullying and traditional bullying. One other question was that what is the most common network where the students are found in or involved in bullying. So according to the teachers in Pakistan, Facebook is still the most common or the most frequently used social networking platform where cyberbullying incidents are reported. On the second position was Instagram, and at third, TikTok was also considered as one of the common forum where cyberbullying cases are reported. At last, we also asked some questions about the teachers. So most of the teachers, approximately 55% of the teachers, wanted to have this anti-bullying intervention implementation in the physical form. They did not like the online training sessions. One other question was that if we are going to build an app for learning intervention design, approximately 54% of the teachers said that it will be a good idea that if there is some supporting app along with the training modules. One more question was that any preferences or reservation for instructors, gender, opposite or same. So most of the teachers say that they are equally comfortable if the gender is same, or if the instructor is of the same gender or the different gender. But when it comes to the implementation, most of the teachers said that whenever they are going to apply their learning in their institutions and going to start talk about the anti-bullying interventions with their students, they would prefer boys and girls in a separate settings. The last question was that if we are going to add some verses from the Quran, or we are going to add some examples of the prophets, or we are going to add some stories from our cultural background, 74% of the teachers said that it will be a good idea that this intervention design should be aligned with the holy books or with the religious perspective of our country. Now, I'm just moving on towards the last part of it, that what is the strength of the research study. As I've already mentioned, that it is not relying on the student self-report, rather the teachers were the main participants in the study. And one another important fact is that this study has provided a new perspective and general guidelines for planning and implementing new socially, culturally anti-bullying intervention for teachers in Pakistan. So the limitations and the direction for future research, it would be a great if the same study will be replicated where the additional educational stakeholders such as administrators, counselors and educational institution staff could also be the part of the study. One another important aspect is that it would be great if in the future studies, the translated version of the instruments should be used, because English is not very common in Pakistan, and especially when the teachers are reporting from rural areas, they have a problems to give the answers if the questionnaire is developed in English language. And one more last recommendation is that a same study should be replicated in a longitudinal study design instead of the cross-sectional design. So finally, the recommendations. So this new intervention is going to encounter both traditional and cyberbullying, and is integrated into the religious, cultural, and social norms of the society. And the creation of the app will also be considered when this intervention design is going to be developed. And the implementation of the separate program for the boys and girls is also recommended to ensure the open dialogue and discussion without hurting any community religious beliefs. So thank you so much for attending the session, and I'm looking forward for your question answers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Your topic was really wonderful. And if anybody has any question, please put on the chat box. If anybody has any questions, suggestions, or recommendations, please ask in the chat box. Ma'am will reply. So anybody wants to share something on what Ma'am Sohoni Siddiqui has shared?
Can I ask like this? There is a problem in typing here.
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine. I can respond. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So it was a very wonderful presentation, and thank you for that. But I wanted to ask you that, I mean, what do you have to say about bullying that happens between the sexes, like girls bullying boys and boys bullying girls? So, like, any data on that, and or maybe any of your observations?
Okay, actually, when I started with this, as every PhD student do, that I started with the literature review, and there is a huge data available on that. And there is a huge difference also. As I said that I belong from Pakistan, but I'm working in Germany, or I'm now in Germany right now. So there are the differences in the region as well. There is no universal rule that the boys are more into the bullying or the girls are more into the bullying, but because the different studies are coming up with the different ideas. But at the end, what I have made at the conclusion, especially when it comes to my region, that girls are also equally involved in the bullying, but they are involved in the different types of the bullying. They are more into the emotional bullying rather than the physical bullying, because this is something our region or our cultural values are different, that the girls are not very confident to confront or come in front and fight back. So they usually take involved in the bullying by keeping their identity safe. They do not want to reveal their identity. And as you said, that harassment or the sexual harassment, this is also very common. And it is also very common among the girls and boys. When it comes to the cyberbullying, there are, as I said, that we are working on the module. So there are the terms we normally use, the cyber grooming, or there's the term we talk about where there's sexual harassment by using the online or porn material. This is also very common, and I'm also working on that to find out that how a child can save themselves to get involved into any kind of these kind of a pornography or any these kind of materials. So my whole intervention is basically, or my PhD project is basically on designing the anti-bullying intervention, but I'm specifically targeting my country, because my country perceptions and the practices are slightly different from the Western world or from the other countries. So that's why I have integrated the religious part as well, because I'm sure everyone knows that Pakistan is basically an Islamic country, and we follow too much about the Islam and the religion, so we are integrating the parts from our religious perspective also. So is there anybody else? What is on cyberbullying through social media, TikTok, how to educate people not to? To be very honest, I'm also very upset with the TikTok and the material that we normally see. My son usually uses the term cringe content. So we see the material is seriously, and I think that it's affecting not only the adults, but also it's not giving a good lesson or the good teaching to the students also. Just to get likes, just to get the subscribers or the followers, and just only the financial benefits at the end the children are seeking. I've seen a very bad content has been posted, and I don't know that why the TikTok is not taking any actions against them. In my country, whenever we are reporting anything that this content is not good and it should not be posted, or it should be given an age restriction limit. So, but still, I see a lot of bad content on the TikTok, and I'm also very upset about it. I usually don't prefer my students or my children to go and watch the TikTok, though I watch the TikTok because this is my work and I really want to get into it to know about it and what's actually going on. But it's true that there is a lot of bad things, not only in TikTok, but even you can see the YouTube shorts, which are now very common also. Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Vibha Joshi, for your comment. Is there anybody else who wants to say something or ask something? I'm so sorry I did not give the presentation because Miss Actarian, I think you're also in Paris right now. So I came from the Berlin. It's snowing in the Berlin. I just came with the fever and with sickness at Paris, but it's also very cold here. Yesterday I went outside, but the weather is also not good here right now.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else,
Thank
or
you.
I can post?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the
Yes.
wonderful information you have shared, and thank you for the wonderful response.
Yes. Yes, I can also share my email address. Maybe somebody wants to ask the questions later on. So
Yes,
it would be great if you want to ask
yes,
anything.
ma'am.
So I'm
Yes,
going to share it in the, and
yes,
thank you for your comments. I will be looking forward for your
yes,
questions.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, now let's move on to the conference. Now let's welcome our next presenter, Saloni Walia, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology in New Delhi, India, and her topic is the importance of education in COVID-19 novel disgrace 1999. You may read her abstract from here. Now let's see what she wants to share with us.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Jammu, India. I'm very grateful that my paper got selected at the 9th Kuala Lumpur International Conference on Social Science and Humanities. The title of my paper is The Importance of Education in Coetzee's novel Disgrace that came out in 1999. Some of the key words in the paper are education, sex, post-colonialism, and consent. For the abstract, I have used a quote from the book, and I quote, "For a man of his age, 52, divorced, he has to his mind solved the problem of sex rather well," unquote. These two lines actually sum up the entire novel. The main character of the novel is David Lowry, who is a professor of communications at Cape Town Technical University in South Africa, and this is the image taken from the cinematic adaptation of Disgrace that came out in 2008 to give a rough idea on how David Lowry must have looked like. So before discussing the main points of the research paper, I would like to discuss the backdrop against which the novel is set. So there has been racial segregation since 1920s in South Africa, which was formerly known as apartheid in 1948. Monarchy left South Africa in 1961, but still Afrikaners or the white minority ruled, which means that they were in power. South Africa finally attained independence in 1994. So the novel is set in the post-colonial, post-apartheid South Africa in the last decade of the 20th century. So as the novel begins, the crisis of humanities in academia is being discussed, which is a worldwide problem. We see that through the character of David Lurie, who is a professor of modern languages, but he has to teach communications, and that too in a scientific institution. And he's at a position, he is an adjunct professor, which is kind of a supplementary position. So we see clearly how humanities and social sciences professors are marginalized. We are also drawn towards the teacher-student relationship, which in this novel we can conclude that it needs remodeling. Lurie lacks enthusiasm in teaching his students due to the cold response that he gets from them. We see that his job is very mechanical in nature and monotonous because there is no sense of belonging. He has published 2 books, but they have not been received well by the literary circuit, so we see that there have been failed attempts at writing by him. We see that there is stagnation in humanities and social sciences. So it kind of calls for a reinvigoration. We also see that instructors generally in school, colleges and universities are burdened with departmental or non-academic work, which hinders the main job of teaching, which is also the case in the novel. And we also see that when initial euphoria of joining academia subsides, the practical side of reality hits us, and we realize that we need a job to earn our bread and butter and to sustain a family. So after a point, one is happy to do the bare minimum of taking home whatever salary we are getting. So this is what Lurie has also restricted himself to, and for him this job is also, it has become very transactional in nature. As the novel progresses, it draws our attention towards the limitations of language, which is ironic, as Lurie is a professor of communication and should be adept at expressing himself, but that is clearly not the case. Language is one part of communication, but it also involves gestures or non-verbal communication, which language just cannot capture. So we see how language fails us. There is inadequacy of language. There is also a reference to Kafka, as he mentions in his biographical work, Letters to Milena, which is also used in the novel, that how Lurie is trying to communicate what is unsaid, in a way going beyond language. By referring to Derek Attridge, who is a South African academic, he sees language as an effect of globalization. So for him, the novel represents South Africa on its way to becoming more Americanized, as everything is quantifiable. There is use of less words, which is a plausible explanation, a possible explanation for David's lack of expression. There is theme of race running parallel in the novel, and as we see, there is shift in power from the whites to the native population. There is an identity crisis, which is described, that puts Afrikaners in jeopardy. The white South African writer Nadine Gordimer, in her 1959 essay Where Do the Whites Fit In, has also shared her concerns as a white writer, that how they are sidelined, or the works produced by them is sidelined, especially after the Black consciousness movement gained momentum in the 1960s. We also see that it can also be one of the reasons that Lurie was not accepted wholeheartedly by his class, because there is a distancing between him being a white teacher, so him being othered by his black students, which is a major concern for the white teaching community. And we also see that the position of white intellectual is also at stake. which this novel also kind of breaks. The intersectional identities like race, gender also create hierarchy in academia, which is very evident in the novel. As the narrative progresses, the topic of sex education becomes important, and as our attention is brought towards it, there is a reference of sexual misconduct on Leory's part in his sexual encounter with his black student, Melanie. Even more surprising is Leory's refusal to cooperate in the investigation and reluctance to defend himself. So there is a criticism of the methods of education in the novel or in South Africa, which is presented by the novel. We see that issues of consent also become important. We face the question that where actually is the consent located? There is no emphatic no from Melanie's side. Is she really aware that she might be manipulated? Consent also deals with figuring out for yourself what you really want and expressing it. So language becomes important, and it is important that how clarity is shown in approval or disapproval of anything. And also, what about the body language or the non-verbal gestures? Do they really count when consent comes into question? Or in the case of persons with disabilities, how will they express themselves? This is a question that we all must think on. Blurred boundaries are very evident at an institutional level when it concerns the student-teacher relationship or the man-woman relationship where gender or sex becomes important. Whereas if it comes to the white man or the black woman's relationship, then race becomes important. So all of these make the narrative very foggy. Melanie's passive participation and there is constant reference to her aversion, makes us ponder that can passivity be a form of expression, and if so, then how can it be read? Does Leory force her or ask for her permission? So in this respect, Laura Kipnis's book Unwanted Advances, Sexual Paranoia Comes to Campus 2017 is important. It is an American text, but it is important in the South African context. So on a conclusive note, we can say that this text is not an easy text to comprehend on the basis of language, narrativity, and characters. It offers a critique of the pedagogical practices at an institutional level. Thank you very much for showing patience and being so wonderful listeners. Thank you.
One's own process.
Thank you, Ma'am Saloni, for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Actually, the audio, I don't know why it was very feeble when I heard in the presentation. When I recorded, I was loud. So I'll keep that in mind next time to be louder.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. No issue, ma'am. You are audible. And thank you for the wonderful presentation. I request everyone, if you have any suggestions or recommendations, please put on the chat box. Okay, so let's move on to the next. Okay, so our next presenter is David Laraway, Department of Spanish and Portuguese, Brigham Young University, Utah, USA. And his topic is Diaspora Politics and Phenomenology of Place in the Basque American West, the case of Miriam Irasi. You may read his abstract from here. Let's see what he wants to share with us.
And I think that it helps Welcome to my presentation. It's unfortunate that we're not able to meet actually in person in Paris, and this is taking place virtually. But I'm grateful anyway for the technology that allows us to have this kind of virtual dialogue together. My name is David Laraway. I'm a professor of Spanish literature, and I'll be sharing with you today a presentation about the origins of Basque American narrative. And although my remarks are going to be very specific with regard to one particular writer that I'm sure that none of you have ever heard of, I do hope that the general questions that I'll be addressing will be of interest to a wider audience, particularly those of you who may take an interest in issues of exile and transculturation and the formation of new hybrid identities. So the literary work that I want to use to frame my presentation is a young adult novel published in 1942 by a woman who went by the name of Miriam Isasi. She had fled the Basque Country in the 1930s during the Spanish Civil War, eventually found her way to the western United States. And like many exiles of the war, she continued to feel a keen attachment to her homeland and almost felt called to be a sort of ambassador at large for the Basque Country, communicating with representatives of the exiled Basque government who had fled to New York. She thought of herself really as bearing a special kind of responsibility to bring the culture of her homeland to a broader public, particularly as the Spanish Civil War came to an end in 1939 and fascism took hold. Now, we don't actually have a lot of bibliographical, or I should say biographical information about Isasi. We don't know much about her life, but she apparently came from a rural area outside of the Basque city of Bilbao, which was and continues to be the largest and most economically significant population center of the Basque Country. We're talking about a very small region, which may be unfamiliar to some of you, straddling the border between Spain and France. It is divided into traditionally 7 provinces, 4 on the Spanish side of the border, 3 on the French side. It doesn't have any particular political status as such. Historically, Basques have often longed for a sort of political autonomy that hasn't been necessarily granted to them, at least in the form of a recognized autonomous state. Its economy is dominated, historically has been dominated primarily by heavy industry, by fishing and agriculture, although the economy today is much more of a high-tech economy. And Basques are famously proud of their distinctive language known as Euskera or Euskara, which is a language isolate, meaning that it is unrelated genetically to any other language currently known. So this is where Miriam Isasi is coming from. And the early decades of the 20th century saw a small but nevertheless significant outward migration from the Basque Country to destinations such as Argentina and the United States as Basques sought improved economic opportunities. The phenomenon has often been referred to as chain migration, particularly in the case of Basque migrants to the western United States, as one migrant would find work. Typically work herding sheep. They would send word back to friends and relatives in the Basque Country and invite those family members and associates to join them. The economic pressures driving outward migration would later be compounded by political pressures as well, the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War in 1936, and then the post-war years when the imposition of Francisco Franco's dictatorship in Spain resulted in the curtailing of the rights of minority cultures and languages, including the culture and language of the Basques. So back to our author, Isasi. Isasi went into exile and she wrote 2 books. One was called Basque Girl, published in 1940. It was a sort of fictionalized memoir of her upbringing in the rural Basque Country. And it contains lengthy, lovingly detailed descriptions of particular Basque cultural practices. And then a second book, published 2 years later, was called White Stars of Freedom. It appeared in 1942 and in fact was finished only a few days after the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor and U.S. involvement in the Second World War. Now, Isasi wrote in English for an English-speaking readership who presumably had no knowledge whatsoever of the Basque Country, which again was a geographically small and demographically sort of modest population. And furthermore, she was writing at a time when immigrant communities in the United States were looked upon with a great deal of suspicion. So her literary output, therefore, had a kind of double purpose. On the one hand, she wanted to celebrate and, in fact, defend Basque culture in the face of domestic threats in Spain, in the face of civil war, and then a hostile authoritarian government. And she was an ardent Basque nationalist, and as such, her work provides us with a kind of idealized image of the Basque nation, a vision very much informed by the views of the most important figure of Basque nationalism in the late 19th and early 20th century, a figure known as Sabino Arana. Arana had argued for a kind of deeply conservative Basque nationalism, which would be marked by its defense of the Basque language, which of course would be prohibited under Franco, its idealization of rural life and customs, its defense of traditional gender roles, and also an aversion to any notion of the mixing of the races. Arana was stridently opposed to Basques intermarrying with non-Basque, particularly with the Spanish and the French. And Isasi is committed to a kind of version of a Basque nationalism that takes this particular form. So, as a writer who was deeply committed to the vision of Basque nationalism at a time when the Basque Country itself was in peril from Spanish fascism and when she was exiled from her own home, she finds herself in the United States, a country just beginning to enter the Second World War, and at a time when exotic foreign ethnic minorities, such as the Japanese, were being actively persecuted and suspected of disloyalty to the United States, she finds herself with a distinctive challenge. Now, what is her task as a writer? On the one hand, she seemed to see herself as a kind of ambassador at large for Basque culture in general, at a time when it was in peril. But on the other hand, she was concerned to be a voice and a defender of Basque immigrants to the United States, depicting them and their values as wholly congruous with mainstream American values, U.S. values. But how might it be possible to both aggressively defend the nationalism of her native culture while defending quintessentially American values? This is a challenge that she faces. And in 1942, Isasi, who by now had moved to California, publishes a novel called White Stars of Freedom that was written for young readers, young adults. It tells the story of a 13-year-old boy named Narbik Aguirre who belongs to a humble family in the Basque countryside, and the novel takes the form of a Bildungsroman, or a coming-of-age story, as Narbik seeks to demonstrate that he is becoming mature, and he asks his father and grandfather for permission to care for the family's flocks for an extended period of time and face the harshness of the elements and overcoming all the obstacles that will come to him as he attempts to demonstrate that he is becoming a man. And in fact, the bulk of the novel describes his experiences as a young shepherd in the Basque countryside and showing how he effectively internalizes Basque values and the meaning of Basque history as it has been passed down to him from not only his parents, but his grandparents and others before him. And so he becomes essentially a living exemplar of these Basque values, and two of them are presented as being quintessentially Basque values, the value of loyalty and the value of freedom. I won't say a great deal today about the Basque understanding of loyalty, but I'll say this much about freedom. The Basques have long had a reputation for collectively believing in and practicing certain kinds of democratic values and celebrating democratic institutions. They were admired, for instance, by the founding fathers of the United States for having established a kind of proto-democracy long before it was fashionable in other European states. So what happens is Narbeek internalizes these values. And as he is caring for the sheep, he ends up meeting another shepherd who had spent a number of years in the United States, where he had in fact gotten married and had become nationalized as a citizen of the United States. He's only back briefly to visit, becomes sort of a mentor for Narbeek. And when war breaks out and Narbeek discovers that he can really no longer remain in his village, he flees then to the United States, where he will work for a number of years as a shepherd in Idaho and eventually finds his way to San Diego, California, where his skills of animal husbandry lead him to secure a position at the famous zoo in San Diego. And as the novel concludes, Narbeek ends up celebrating and fully embracing American values as well. And in the final pages of the novel, he effectively takes the oath of citizenship, becoming a U.S. citizen. And he is now determined, again, immediately following the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, to join the U.S. Marines, inspired by their motto, Semper Fidelis, always faithful, always loyal. And this is a motto that seems to perfectly encapsulate the value of loyalty that he learned to prize as a young man in the faraway mountains of the Basque Country. Now, Isasi's novel has been almost entirely overlooked by scholars, even though in its day it was praised by none other than the First Lady of the United States, Eleanor Roosevelt. And histories of Basque American literature almost always began by mentioning works published a decade and a half later. Now, why might this be? In part, it's because the book seems too narrowly propagandistic. It seems almost excessive in its praise of American values and distinctiveness and so on. It has very much a didactic sort of cast, which has not aged particularly well. And there has been a tendency on the part of scholars who have talked about the book to read it through the lens of the melting pot theory of cultural assimilation. And according to this account, which was very popular in the mid-20th century, one undergoes a certain transformational process in uniting with the dominant culture. One exchanges some of the peculiarities of one's native culture for the benefits, social and otherwise, of full citizenship. And I think that this is in part a reason why Isasi's novel is not often read. It's taken to be naive and superficial, a sort of casual endorsement, aggressive in some ways and naive in others, in simply endorsing the embrace of American ideals and values, and sort of an incarnation of the melting pot theory. But I'd like to suggest in the few remaining minutes that I have that there's another way of thinking of Isasi's attempt to, as I see it, remain faithful to her native Basque culture, even as she suggests that her immigrant protagonist may become fully and proudly American. So both things I'm going to suggest can be achieved simultaneously. One may be fully committed to and aggressively defend one's native values, even as one becomes fully American. Now, let me recall just briefly the two quintessentially Basque virtues that the novel celebrates, even as Isasi attempts to demonstrate that they are also quintessentially American values, loyalty and freedom. So a crucial scene of the novel is actually set under the branches of the famed Oak of Guernica. This is the tree where traditionally Basques would gather to settle disputes by a kind of proto-democratic mechanism. They would gather, none of them were lords over anyone else, and they would sort of collectively reach particular determinations. The Oak of Guernica also was and remains a cherished spot where traditionally the Spanish monarchs would swear to respect and uphold the fueros, or the ancient laws guaranteeing the rights of the Basques, even as in exchange the Basques accepted the monarch of Spain as legitimate. Although the fueros were abandoned in the 19th century, the Oak of Guernica remains very much up to this day a sacred spot for the Basques. So the characters in the novel gather in 1936 to decide upon a response to the new political threats to their traditional freedoms. But as the discussion proceeds, a personal matter finds its way into the discussion. Narbeek's stepsister, Begonia, is coming of age, and she is preparing for marriage. But as a child, she had been betrothed to a young man from a respectable family. But as this young man aged, he turns into a selfish, disagreeable character. And Begonia wishes to break off the engagement in order to marry a young man of her own choosing. As the conversation under the oak of Guernica develops, it becomes clear that this sort of age-old value of freedom, so much cherished by the Basques, has reached a kind of impasse. Insofar as it had always been conceived of as a collective social virtue rather than a question of individual liberty to choose, particularly with regard to traditional gender roles. So the failure of the traditional Basque value of freedom, or the apparent failure of the traditional Basque value of freedom in the case of Begonia and her betrothal, has seemed to some critics to have been underscored by the personal freedom to choose that Begonia experiences when she also comes to the United States with her stepbrother Narvik. In fact, it has seemed to some readers that Begonia's embrace of the kind of liberty to choose one's own romantic partner serves as a kind of vindication of the melting pot theory. In other words, old customs and values, such as allowing one's family to determine who one should marry, are to be discarded in favor of the prevailing values of the dominant culture, in this case, American personal autonomy to choose one's own romantic partner. But there's another way of interpreting the unfolding of this process, and I think that it helps us to understand more clearly the significance of Isasi's work. The quintessentially Basque value of freedom is not obviated or undermined by the American notion of individual liberty. And Narvik's taking of the oath of citizenship is not necessarily a renunciation of his own native values. Rather, we may think of the logic at stake in the novel as something akin to the logic of Hegelian sublation. Now, the defining challenge for Basque immigrants to the United States is to determine how one can be fully American without betraying one's traditional Basque roots and values. Isasi suggests that rather than understand the process simply in terms of assimilation or absorption into the dominant culture, we could think of it as an instance of Hegelian sublation. This is my own sort of interpretation of what's going on in Isasi's work. She doesn't mention Hegel. This is a young adult novel, which is very sort of simplistic in the way it presents the issues. So what exactly does this mean? Well, it's a very complicated notion for Hegel, and I'll just offer you a very brief summary of what is at stake here. Hegel, of course, makes use of an ambitious dialectical method to discern the essence of particular concepts. What happens in the process of this sort of unfolding of a dialectic is something known as sublation. And just to read this brief description, which I provided for you in the slide, the English verb to sublate translates Hegel's technical use of the German verb aufheben, which is a crucial concept in the dialectical method. Hegel says that aufheben has a doubled meaning. It means both to cancel or negate and to preserve at the same time. The moment of understanding sublates itself because its own character or nature, its one-sidedness or restrictedness, destabilizes its definition and leads it to pass into its opposite. The dialectical moment thus involves a process of self-sublation, or a process in which the determination from the moment of understanding sublates itself, or both cancels and preserves itself, as it pushes on or passes into its opposite. So something like this, I argue, is at stake in Isasi's treatment of the theme of freedom. Her argument is not that the Basque notion of freedom is merely canceled out and shown to be mistaken as the protagonists find their way to the United States and embrace a different sort of notion of freedom. Rather, it is that the essence of freedom itself is revealed or distilled through a kind of dialectical process. To become American, then, according to Isasi, is not to forego traditional Basque values. It's to see how their essence may be most fully revealed or expressed through this particular process, which works out the internal contradictions in the concept themselves. And so what the American sort of backdrop provides then for these Basque nationalist characters is a mechanism for recontextualizing their values, not abandoning them, not canceling them, not obviating them, but recontextualizing them and discovering in turn what their essence will turn out to be. It's in this way, I argue, that Asasi suggests that the decision that the Basque immigrant is believed to have to make between their deepest native values and the values of their new host society actually turns out to be a false one. The essence of Basque nationalism can be most fully disclosed, she suggests, as it is sublated through a quintessentially American understanding of loyalty and individual freedom. Thank you very much for your attention. It's been a pleasure to visit with you.
Thank you, Sir David, for the wonderful presentation. Okay, so now let's move on to the conference. Now let's welcome our next presenter, Dr. Vibha Joshi, Department of Economics, Vasanta College of Women, Banaras Hindu University, Rajghat, Varanasi, India. And her topic is Revigorated Human through Reframing Education for Sustainable Society and Environment. You may see her abstract from here. Now let's see what she wants to share with us.
Good morning to all of you present over here on this online platform. I am Vibha Joshi, Professor in Department of Economics in BHU at Varanasi. And the topic I have chosen for this conference is Reinvigorating Human Capital through Reframing Education for Sustainable Society and Environment. We all know that education is a fundamental right, and it also creates the voice through which other rights can be claimed and protected. So the object of this presentation is that I have to see the role and importance of the right education for reinvigorating human capital as the primary determinant of ecological, social, and economic development and sustainability. And the methodology I have chosen for this presentation is that this presentation will discuss education, as we all know, as the essential foundation for improved human capital, with particular references to India's new national education policy, that is NEP 2020, and also the teachings of J. Krishnamurti on the right education for a sustainable society and environment. We all know that if we will see the present scenario, that there are so many things which we can see which are very good in this present economic system. We all know that there is economic development if we have to calculate in terms of per capita income, in terms of GDP. We can see that there is increase in income and wealth also. Then the life expectancy is also increasing, and you can see that this education quality, and due to education to maximum people, I will not say that everybody is getting the right kind of education and the education which he needs to be a gentle human being or a proper human being, but still there is education and the quality of life is also improving. So we can say that the overall human well-being and capabilities are increasing in this present scenario, and these are the achievements of human all over the world, we can say. But this is not the ultimate position, because if we will see the present scenario, there are so many things which we should concern about, because we can see that there are incidents of extreme deprivations. You can see the level of inequality. This is increasing day by day. Then, because there is inequality, there are also gaps in opportunities. And this economic development which we are achieving, actually what is the environmental and social cost of this development, we have to think about it once more. And we all can see the situation of the world right now, that there are so many conflicts at national level, at international level, at local level, at family level, right? And also conflicts within the human beings also. Your inner and outer personality is in conflict right now. There is power hunger. Sometimes we know that we want some authority, we want some control over others, and with that there is increase in insecurity and fear among the human being. So this is the present scenario. We all are witnessing that there is continuous conflict between the nations, and day by day the challenges or the dangers of increasing these conflicts are increasing. So if we will see that income, wealth, and gender inequalities often translate into inequalities and opportunities. And we all know that women, indigenous people, ethnic minorities, persons with disabilities, there are so many marginalized groups which are facing this extreme poverty in their life. Thus, according to that first quadrennial Global Sustainable Development Report, right? And if we see this report, we can see that those who have just moved out of extreme poverty and people who do not have any form of social protection remain highly vulnerable to economic and environmental crises, climate change, armed conflicts, and other shocks. And if we will see the words of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, when he says that our world as we know it and the future we want are at risk. This report actually reminds us that the future is determined what we do now, and the window of opportunities is closing fast. So we have to think over it, that what do we want? We all want economic development with sustainability. We all want advancing human well-being, including material well-being, health, education, voices, access to a clean and safe environment, and resilience. We actually want to transform this world, but we are seeing we really don't want it, but we want a transformed world. And this is the agenda of 2030 for sustainable development in 2050. So what we can do actually, we need holistic education to change our thinking patterns, feelings for the surrounding environment, and attitudes toward our fellow humans for a sustainable society and the developed environment. Now, what is the meaning of sustainable development? If we have to see, we all know that a pattern of development that meets the needs of present generation without compromising the rights of future generation to fulfill their needs. So whenever there is need of, or we talk about sustainable development, we need cooperation. collaboration, and dialogue among multiple stakeholders. There is no single pathway, and different combinations of efforts are required across regions. And also we know that the future is determined what we do and think now. We all know the power of now. And at this present scenario, I think that education is the only thing which we have to focus once again. It is well accepted thought that health and education are not mere outcomes of economic development. However, they are the essential means of achieving the SDG, transforming the world into the desired level of sustainability. Here you can see I have given two links. One is for the presentation of my slides on new education policy, and one is the government site link. And we can, if you are eager to see this, you can go and see this and check this. And I will just tell you that new education policy 2020 provides a significant opportunity to focus on human development, enabling every student to develop to their maximum potential. The national education policy focuses on foundational literacy and numeracy, with the increased focus on involving parents in education and using technology effectively to bridge the digital divide to lessen the threat of learning crisis. And that crisis after the COVID-19 pandemic severely, which has disrupted education in the world, including India. So I will move on to next slide, which is actually based on Krishnamurti. I'm much more interested in talking about J. Krishnamurti, who is a renowned philosopher and who has given his ideas on education and the present scenario of education. And when he was talking in India in 1948, he said that that throughout the world education has failed because it has produced the two most colossal and destructive wars in history. And since it has failed, merely to substitute one system for another seems to me to be utterly futile. And we can see that he is talking these words in 1948, and he continues when he says that first of all, to understand what part education can play in the present world crisis, we must understand how the crisis has come into being. Without understanding that, merely to build on the same values, on the same ground, on the same foundation, will bring about further wars, further disasters. So we must try investigating how the present crisis has come into being, and in understanding the causes, we will inevitably understand what kind of education we need. And if we will go through Krishnamurti's explanation about the present scenario and about the failure of the education system and all those things, we can say that Krishnamurti has given more emphasis on the transformation of the teacher as a human being. And if a teacher is a perfect human being, then he can give a right kind of education to each and every student. And if each and everybody has that right kind of education, and when he is saying this right kind of education, then we can make a world which is just good and blissful place to live in for everyone. There is no conflict, there is no continuous threat of war, there is no continuous threat of having all these disasters. It may be environmental disasters, it may be natural calamities, because then we will have a better relationship with the surroundings, with our environment. And he says that you have to understand yourself. Krishnamurti says that wisdom begins with self-knowledge, and without self-knowledge, just information leads to distraction. Without self-knowledge, we can see that airplane becomes the most destructive instrument in life. But with self-knowledge, it is a means of human help. So a teacher must obviously be one who is not within the clutches of societies, who does not play power politics or seek position or authority. In himself, he has discovered that which is eternal, and therefore the teacher will be capable of imparting that knowledge which will help another to discover his own means to enlightenment. And this type of education will bring a tremendous change in the society, because the students of today are going to make the world for tomorrow. And with this, if I have to give those concluding remarks, I can say that the future is always determined by what we think and do now. We cannot change the past, but together we can make better choices necessary to realize our dreams and ambitions for sustainable economic development with advanced and invigorated human beings in a safe environment and a peaceful world. And if you can see the future, if we all have that better understanding, then we can see that the future will be really a very good, colorful, and it will be a bliss for each and everyone. And thank you very much for listening me so patiently and with attention. And I just want to give you the name of that book by J. Krishnamurti, on which I have uh, which book I have taken for this presentation, and which I will suggest you to read. That is Educating the Educator by J. Krishnamurti. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am Vibha Joshi, for the lovely presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I can see there is a question in that chat box. Yeah, so the question was, let me see that question.
Yes, please. If anybody have any question, recommendation or suggestion, please put on the chat box. Ma'am will answer the question.
Yeah, the question is that, is there any relation between education development and women equality? Yeah, so I will say that there is a very positive relationship between the gender inequality and education, because we can see the gender inequality everywhere. And if we can give the opportunity to have education, that perhaps we are increasing the opportunity for the women to have other things like independence, economic independence, and the mental level independence, so that they can do much more positive work, and they can live a life of with their own decisions, I think. So education can play a great role in this. Anyone else want to ask any question on this presentation?
Anyone? Okay, so now let's move on to the next. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
So now let's welcome our next presenter, ma'am Dr. Kalplata Dimri, Department of Economics, Vasant Kanya Mahavidyalaya, affiliated to Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, India. And her topic is Impact of COVID-19 on India's International Trade. You may read her abstract from here. Let's see what she wants to share with us.
Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Kalpita Dimri, Professor, Department of Economics from Vasant Kanya Mahavidyalay, Varanasi, India. I am here to present my paper on impact of COVID-19 on India's international trade. We begin our presentation with the concept of global value chain, which means production is broken into activities and tasks carried out in different countries, with each stage adding value to the previous stage. In order to illustrate the operations of the GVC, let us take the example of an iPhone. Its designing and conceptualization starts in the US, and then inputs are sourced from various other countries, and final manufacturing takes place in China, from where it is shipped to consumers all around the world. So, around 43 countries over 6 continents are involved in its production. GVC export accounting for more than 50% of global exports, and no country can maintain strong growth in exports without engaging deeper in GVC. Indian position in the global value chain. Prior to 1990s, Indian economy was largely closed for foreign trade. Chief exports were traditional sectors such as textiles and agricultural commodities. But by 2015, exports were led by engineering, pharmaceuticals, along with IT and ITES-enabled services. Oil has continued to remain the chief item of import in all the periods. There has also been a remarkable shift in terms of India's trading partner. The share of exports to OPEC and developing countries of Asia has increased, and exports to OECD and Eastern European countries has decreased. In terms of imports, our dependency on Eastern Europe has reduced, while China and US have become major players. India's share in global GVC was only 1.5%, amounting to around $241. To understand this further, we need to see the components of international trade. We know that international trade is made up of net exports, which is the difference between the value of total export and import within a given time frame. This includes merchandise and services, and this forms the most important component of the current account. Then we have net factor income from abroad, which is the difference between the income received by residents and the income paid to foreigners. There are 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, which correspond to rent, wage, interest, and profits respectively. And then the third component is direct transfer, which is a one-way payment. Remittance from workers to their home countries is the best example of transfers. India's current account deficit. We can see here a pattern of India's current account deficit from 2010 up to 2021. We see that the current account deficit has decreased, and decreased means it has become positive, that is, the value of exports has become more than imports during the pandemic year of 2020. If we see the overall trend, India's exports have declined by 7.5%, led by oil exports, meat, dairy, poultry, and engineering. But there was a rise in drugs and pharmaceuticals. On the other hand, imports declined even more sharply at 16.6%. Sharp fall in petroleum, oil, and lubricants was the reason behind this. Turning to services, it is worth mentioning that its surplus has been the cushioning effect in merchandise trade for many years now. This continued even during COVID-19, where service sector showed resilience vis-a-vis merchandise. Naturally enough, traveling and allied services were deeply affected in COVID. Construction activities too were severely affected to maintain social distancing. There were some sunrise sectors as well, like internet and communication technology, which experienced a positive effect as companies started introducing work from home policies for their employees. Financial services also witnessed an uptick. In the first quarter of 2020, India's GDP dropped by 24.4%. Although there was minimal recovery in the subsequent quarters, the overall rate of contraction in financial year was 7.3%. This was only fourth instance in India's post-independence history that it witnessed a negative growth rate and was the highest ever fall. Here are some values which show the imports, exports, and service trade for India from a period of 2018 to 2021. India is the largest recipient of remittances globally, accounting for an average 3% of the GDP between 2000 to 2001. According to a survey by Reserve Bank of India, UAE and USA and Saudi Arabia have been the three major destinations of Indian migrants for the past 2 decades. Most of the migrants are in the Gulf countries employed in low-skilled jobs, which are not backed by any legal or social protection. Strict lockdowns affected their income and in turn the remittance they sent back home. The remittance from the Gulf has declined from more than 50% in 2016-17 to about 30% in 2020-21. On the other hand, advanced economies like the US and UK and Singapore emerged as important sources of the country remittance, accounting for 36% of the total payments in 2020-21. Here is a graph that shows the foreign remittance to India from workers living abroad in various other countries. Indian measures to promote international trade. At the onset of the pandemic, India's tariff and non-tariff barriers are on the higher side vis-a-vis major emerging economies. Also, we have issues for quality of power, industry, logistics, and communication infrastructure. But we do have a large youth population, and with the right mix of skill set, we can realize the productivity gains offered by participation in GVCs. Foreseeing the position of the Indian economy and the crisis that is COVID-19, the Government of India adopted both fiscal and monetary measures. Under fiscal policy, a two-pronged approach through the Atmanirbhar Bharat policy was initiated. On one hand, it provided fiscal support of rupees 20 lakh crore to promote domestic industry and thereby prevent a major economic downturn. On the other hand, it initiated a series of policy reforms such as supply chain reforms for agriculture, rational tax systems, simple and clear laws, capable human resources, and a strong financial system to reset the economy and transition its position in the value chain. The Central Bank of India also responded with a mix of conventional and unconventional liquidity measures. The policy rate, that is repo rate, was reduced from 5.4% in January 2020 to 4% in October 2020. This stance is a change from neutral to accommodative, meaning it was willing to cut interest to spur growth. As we look beyond 2020, we see that the Indian economy was already slowing before its onset, but COVID-19 has definitely threw it out of gear. Fortunately, there is an improvement in the growth rate. As we can see in table, there is a rebound in India's growth rate on the back of strong macroeconomic fundamentals. India's overall exports, merchandise and services touched an all-time high of $669.65 billion in April to March 2021-22, jumping by 34.5% over the same period last year. With that, we come to an end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Kalplata, for sharing the wonderful information with us. I request, ma'am, please put your camera on. Okay, so if anybody have any questions, suggestions, or recommendations, please put on the chat box. Now let's move on to the conference. Now let's welcome our next presenter, Catherine Pritzkalava, PhD in Psychology, Faculty Psychology and Educational Sciences, Ivane Javakinspili, Tbilisi State University, Tbilisi, Georgia. And her topic is Georgian migration to Western Europe, the cases of healthy versus unhealthy adaptation. You may read her abstract from here. Now let's see what she wants to share with us.
Hello, I am Ekaterina Pirtskhalava from Georgia, from Tbilisi State University, and I will present research analyzed by me and my colleagues. This is about Georgian migrants, Georgian migration in Western Europe, and how they are adapting healthy or unhealthy way. Georgia is in Eastern Europe. On the map you can see Georgia, capital Tbilisi, and three different countries which are far away from Georgia. This is Portugal, France and Germany, in which the research was conducted. Research question. The purpose of the study is identify the factors which are important for Georgian migrants in process of integration in new social environment, and discover the obstacle they faced while accommodating in new environment, and identify the factors which helps healthy or unhealthy adaptation. We have different framework. This research was conducted in three different countries within framework of three different scholarship. A little bit about immigration backgrounds from Georgia. Georgia is post-Soviet republic. It means after collapse Soviet Union, when Georgian became independent, people who was working in worldwide Soviet Union and had a job, they lost a job and they tried to go to abroad to support financially their families. First wave from Soviet Union was in post-Soviet Republic. It was Russia, Belarus and Ukraine. And the second, after war with Russia, which started in 1991, it was European Union country. Georgia is a small country, and according to data, general population census in Georgia are living 3,729,000 persons. As scholars argued, they divided three periods of migration Georgian from Georgia. This is between 1995, 2005, and after 2005. As I admitted, a later popular place for Georgian migrants became Greece, Cyprus, Germany, Spain and Italy in Western European countries, and USA in more Western. In this study, we used a theoretical framework about migration, adaptation, integration, and acculturation. Especially in this part, we underlined acculturation stress countries. As I admitted, it was in Portugal, France, and Germany in different year, 2015 and 16 in Portugal, 2016 in France, and in 2021 in Germany. Interviews were conducted in Georgian, and sampling was snowball sampling. As you know, this is most common sampling and recruitment when you are studying migration. Research guideline consists of open-ended questions which included different parts from demographic to their attitudes to different side. With my colleagues, we divided transcript narratives with major themes and subthemes and analyzed in this way. What was the arrival reason? Arrival reason in different country was different, but some part of migrants participated in this study had the same reason. It was to change life from Georgia to new European country and to grow up their children in Europe more freely, more independent, and in good health insurance. But some of them migrated as labor migrants. Portugal was chosen as country destination because of document to be part of Europe was easy getting. They had a good social network in this country. A rival reason to France was most about health problem. It means hepatitis, tuberculosis, leukemia, and hearing problems. And some of them was as asylum seeker, as political persecutions, religion persecutions, and identity. It's LGBT identity was one of the reasons to go to France. About German, it was a little bit different because of participants of my study came to German as part of program which offered German government to young people to study German abroad, living with German families, and after continue the study. And in this way, migrants who was living in Germany, they had more different reason to choosing the country. As we know, adaptation, integration process has acculturation stress, and it means people who are living abroad have influence on different psychological problems: happiness, vitality, enthusiasm, self-esteem, and subject well-being. Factors healthy and unhealthy adaptation, according to scholars who are studying migrants, underline different kind. One of the factor is language. No language, and it's if they are common language, it means you have less stressful environment. But Georgian are speaking in language. This is Georgian, and only Georgian are speaking in Georgian language because of the Georgia was the part of Soviet Union. The second language for Georgian citizens were Russian, and some school had opportunity to choose the third language. It is German, French, or English. And in our case, in Portugal, did not knew the Portuguese language was very stressful, and in German it was not so stressful, because when they came in German they knew a little bit about German language. They could to talk with someone, but study was difficult and it was stressful. In French, it was the same as in Portugal, but a little bit different. Some our research participants knew a little bit when they came, but it was the most part of stress situation when they continue living. Healthy factor we can underline, it was religion, because of Georgian are Christian, they are Orthodox Christian, not Catholic, but as Georgian participants admitted, it helps to feel part of European people, as part of Christianity, and it helps to adapt in new environment. Third factor is categorize society we and other, and the fourth are strategy maintain their identity. As I told, the factors divided host society with them admitted it was the using individual and collective identity, and categorization society we and others. This categorization helped differentiate their society with European society, differentiated with relative perception of relativeness of friendship and family birthing, and as identity, collective identity and individual identity strategies they chose for avoiding stigmatization, deprecation of their identity, acceptance denied of idealization, host society identity. Unfortunately, I have short time to explain everything. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mama Catherine, for the wonderful presentation. Would you like to add something?
Hello again, everybody. Unfortunately, I had not much time to present this. I have a lot of interesting discovering in this case, and I will try to answer the question: how do Georgian people behavior change after migrated in decades? It depends how we can explain changes. Yes, they are changes, and they are more Germanies in German, but when they are back in Georgian, they are Georgians. And about when I underlined about identity maintaining, it means that they are stay in identity, and they are trying to keep them, and as Barry argued, it continues until to a third generation. But after third generation, they are more acculturated than it was first generation, and it means they have little bit different behavior than people who are living in Georgia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to the conference. So now let's welcome our next presenter, Abhinav Dikshit. Independent author self-work, Noida, India, and his topic is Smart Solution for Optimized Mass Customization Project Process in Smartphone Industry. You may read his abstract from here. Now let's see what he and his co-author wants to share with us.
Good day, everyone. Myself, Ankita Dikshit, and with me, co-author is Mr. Abhinav Dikshit. We are independent authors from Noida, India, and title of our work is Smart Solution for Optimized Mass Customization Process in Smartphone Industry. And here's a table of content: the problem statement, mass customization, workflow methodology, sourcing and distribution, cost benefit analysis, and the future work conclusion. The problem statement states for our work is to deal with the dynamic customized demands of individual customer from varied segments and offer them customized solution by simultaneously achieving economics of scales. So to explain our work, first we would like to cover up the concept of mass customization. Basically, mass customization we can say as some business of the brand, they first observe the behavior and predict the preferences of the individual customers, and accordingly they make the customized product and the services and they deliver to the customers for their choices. Basically, we can say that mass customization is a marketing and manufacturing technique that combines the flexibility and personalization of custom-made products with a low cost unit, and it allows customer to design made to order features. Like customer, they can order feature of their choices, and the most suitable technique that is used in mass customization is assemble to order, that is the ATO. Just to give a glance on what ATO is, it's a business production strategy, and the benefits of ATO is low inventory risk, increased flexibility, short lead time, rapid production of customized product. So products are assembled from the previously completed sub-assemblies, and whenever a new customized order comes to the business or the brand. And the next is our workflow methodology, and this covers three main phases. The phase one is the smart identification of usability features, optimized solution of similar but not same usability features, and detection of aesthetic features, predicted demand of each possible feature set. Basically, these three phases are the USP, or you can say the heart of our research work, and my co-author Mr. Abhinav Dikshit will now explain these phases one by one.
So thank you, Ms. Ankita, for giving me platform to explain the workflow methodology for our research work. So has already been given an introduction about what all phases that are included. So I will be giving a brief walkthrough over the phases that are involved. So the first phase that involved is about the smart identification of usability features. Now, if we'll talk about the base level of what it is about, so when a mobile device has been created, so ample lot of hardware and software combinations can exist while we create or while we manufacture any device. But at the same time, not all features that are available, or what not all the possible hardware and software combinations, they're practically possible. For example, if we talk about a mobile device who needs to be having a 6 GB or say 12 GB of RAM, so they cannot have a space of a lesser amount, or they cannot have a features of a lesser amount. So they need to have a bit better upgrades in the configuration. Only then such kind of features can be supported. So it gets very important to identify what all are the possible hardware and software components which are feasible. So on that note, if we'll give a view on the equation that has been given. So here the M stands for the number of hardware components, N stands for the number of software components, and the variable X and Y are the possible combinations of hardware components that are possible, and Y stands for the possible components for the software are possible. But This is on a generic level. However, if on a practical basis, if we talk about, so all possible combinations already been said earlier are not technically feasible at all. And if we'll sit and we'll try to find out all these features and then try to eliminate the one which are not required, it is practically not possible, or rather it is a very time consuming activity. So hence the keyword smart identification comes into picture. So let me give a walkthrough of what smart identification is. So it's like uh, we are trying to take all the possible combinations of hardware. We're trying to take all the possible combinations of the software and what all constraints that are available, and then we come out with a variable k that stands for the total number of feasible combinations which are actually possible. So this is done by this is automatically been done so that we get a final output where we have all the possible feasible combinations of the hardwares and the softwares done automatically without a manual intervention. So this is all about our for phase 1. Now moving on to the next phase, that is phase 2. Here it talks about optimized solution of similar but not same usability features and detection of aesthetic features. Now the base of the phase 2 talks about clustering. What clustering is all about is it is a task of grouping a set of objects in such a way that objects in the same group are more similar to each other than those in other group. So again it talks about similar but not same. So what happens is after doing the exercise in the phase 1, when we are out with the feasible combinations of identified, then the customer's similar preferences are grouped to form the clusters in order to achieve cost reduction and the optimization. Now, what we see here in the figure is about the clusters that we have, and they are the data points. So data points here we refer to as the number of users or the users which are there. Now, if we see the distances which are between the data points, they can be similar, they cannot be similar. And what all these represent is as a similar specification if we talk about a one specific cluster which are there. Hence, so the distance between, this is what has been written, the distance between any two similar data points within a cluster is generated by an aesthetic feature. Now what differentiates things what differentiates actually the data points is the aesthetic features. What aesthetic features basically could be, if we'll talk about in a mobile device, then it could be tempered glasses, or it could be the quality of back cover material, or are we about the quality of the earphones. So these all, everything adds to the aesthetic values of the mobile devices. So hence it's about finding the optimized solution for the similar but not same usability features, and on the basis of that we do the groupings, and on the basis of groupings we identify the similar users, similar data points, and then and they are differentiated on the basis of the aesthetic features. Now coming to the last phase, this is about predicting demand of each possible feature set, and it is done using SMOT algorithm. And what SMOT stands for, it is synthetic minority oversampling technique algorithm. Now what happens, we have seen previously that we have clusters and clusters have the data point. Now no, on a practical scenario, if we'll talk about, no two clusters can have same number of data points. So homogeneity will not be there. And if we'll try to do prediction, then the predictive value will never be same, because no two sample size are no two cluster size are homogeneous compared to each other. So so on the basis of that, SMOT algorithm is being used. So it is basically an oversampling data augmentation algorithm technique which is used to fill each clusters with same number of elements so that the sample size can remain same across each clusters. So if we'll see about this equation, so Ci, Cj, they are the clusters which belongs to K, and what K is the feasible combination that we have found in the previous phase, and Pi, Pj are the augmentation factors which are added by this Moat algorithm to make the sampling or to make the clusters same or to make the clusters homogeneous across our prediction work. And hence, so this is what it is. And if we'll talk about determining the demand based on the historical purchase, then the historical purchase is about if we'll try to look into the purchasing pattern of the customer, how they are purchasing and what kind of features they are requesting or what kind of work they have been doing, research work they have been doing while buying any mobile device or requesting any specific features from in a mobile device. So that all gets come under the heading of the historical purchase. So if we'll talk about this equation, so here the variable x, it is are the historical purchases from the sample set of clusters, and the factors s is the sales of the smartphone that will be increased based on the industrial growth trend. So therefore, if we need to find out the demand of mobile in the current year, so that would be 100 plus s divided by 100 into x, where 100 plus s is a percentage change, and s is the factor of increase, how much the sales has increased, and x with respect to the historical purchase from the sample set of clusters. And if we need to find out overall demand in a cluster, then it would be Ci plus Pi, where Ci is the cluster for and Pi are the augmentation factor, and for all the possible feasibility combination that we have into the overall current demand. So hence by this we will be able to find what all possible prediction for specific features are there in a mobile device that a user has asked for, and simultaneously and eventually the concept of mass customization can be implemented. Now moving on to the next part is about the sourcing and the distribution. Now we have analyzed, we have seen that what all work is being required to do an initial prediction of the work, to find out the feasible combinations, to group the customers into a similar set of clusters, and then find out or predicting the demand as per their needs. So on the basis of that, now it's become very important to do the sourcing and the distribution of the work. So now, as we discussed in the previous slide, so sourcing and distribution, it act as one of the key heart of the work done, because if we manufacture the work, if we manufacture the products, if we identify the end user demand, we do the forecasting, but if our distribution network is not efficient enough, then it will not be able to give us the output that we seek to have from the customization of the mass customization, or we can see the volume manufacturing that we are doing. So hence the mass customization very peculiarly talks about the concept of economies of scale. So on a layman language, what economies of scale stands for, it is like the proportionate saving in cost which is gained by increased level of production. And as already been discussed in the previous slide, here we try to do manufacturing of the products as per the demands of the customers, so that using maybe the bulk production, or as I will be covering the next step, so that we have an increased level of production, keeping the cost minimum as much as possible. So there are two ways we can achieve the economies of scale. The step number, or the way number one would be that the smartphone manufacturing company, they can do mass production of the components or the modules by themselves, because this will anyhow coming out to be economical for them when they'll go for the bulk production, because they go for the bulk purchase, bulk acquiring of the raw material, which anyhow adds to the discount to them. Or the second option could be the manufacturing work, they can be outsourced to the third party so that they can manufacture the component in the large volume, and the smartphone companies they can just do the assembling of the final product. So hence, economies of scale, it occurs from the operational efficiencies that improves with the increase of scale of production. Now, as discussed, like the main sources of how we can achieve economies of scale, either it could be doing the bulk purchase, or we can do improvement in the management quality, or in the utilization of technologies that we are using so that we can have increased efficiency or the supply chain distribution. Now, if we'll talk about the sourcing approach, there are we can see a sharp difference between what a traditional approach was doing and what mass customization approach will do. So in traditional approach, what is doing, say we have two modules X and Y, they are produced by a third party, then they will be given to firm A, and firm A will be using say module X to produce their end product P1, or module B will use product X to produce P2. But in mass customization, a single product will be, common module will be produced so that both the firms A and B can use them simultaneously. So there is no work involved by two different vendors will be working. It's like the same will be work across the firms to produce their end products. And then once the work has been done, it becomes important to do the distribution function. And for distribution, initially what the things were there was one single supply chain model, but we need to focus on the simultaneously many supply chain so that the concept of modularization can be achieved, so that we can with mass involved basically reaching out to many people, and mass customization distribution is what we have customized, and what we have produced we need to distribute it the same. So if we'll talk about it, just a basic supply chain flow chart is there, that we have raw materials go to suppliers, then go to factories, then to distribution center, from distribution go to retail and to the end customer. Now this is a single chain. To have a mass customization, we need to have a modularization, where we need to think about how we can do simultaneously or parallelly we can work on the trays, on the containers, the vehicles, or the warehouses, distribution center, so that we can have all kind of demand that is being asked by the end user, so that they can be delivered effectively. So on that note, I would like to give platform to my author Ankita Dikshit, so that she'll talk about the cost and benefit analysis of mass customization. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhinav. Now covering the cost benefit analysis, basically when we are in a phase to decide that whether for a product we should go for the mass customization or not, then cost benefit analysis is done. So generally what the business like firms do, they practice the mass customization. First, they ensure that cost advantages should be obtained due to their scale of operation, with cost per unit of the output decreasing with the increasing sales. So basically, there are two factors that are being covered. One is the cost saving and one is the additional activity cost. So as per the slide shown, cost savings, they have few parameters, and additional activity cost, they have some parameters. These are all basically the mathematical figures that are calculated based on the market review and other factors, and based on these mathematical calculations, decision is done whether that mass production will be done for some product or not. So you can say if savings due to economies of integration is greater than additional cost of mass customization, then only firm will decide that they will pursue for the mass customization. Otherwise, they will not pursue for the mass customization. Now coming to the conclusion and the future work, well, mass customization has proved to be a path-breaking approach in many industries, and like fashion, footwear, computers, mobile, and still expanding. And smartphone industry is one of such industry which have a very big potential customer base for this approach to be used. So our future work involves the simulation of our proposed work, and we are further doing the research study for more efficient AI-based algorithm. Currently, the algorithm that we have used is SMOTE, and we are working like how better we can enhance this current existing algorithm, and yes, how can we expand this particular idea of the mass customization in various other fields. And with this, we end our presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Abhinav and Ma'am Ankita for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Would you like to add something?
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. We were looking forward to, present this in person, and we are already in Paris for the same. So yeah, so it's like it would have been more good, like if we have could met everyone, and but it's a very good platform. And it's a very good opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Pleasure is all ours. If anybody has any questions or recommendations, suggestions, please put on the chat box. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now move on to the next. Now let's welcome the next presenter, Professor Dr. Farzaneh Solamni Yogi, International Business and Leadership, SRH University of Applied Sciences, Berlin, Germany. And her topic is the importance of complaint management in attribute-based shopping. You may read her abstract from here. Now let's see what she wants to share with us.
Hello everyone, my name is Farzaneh Solamni. I'm a professor at SRH Berlin University of Applied Sciences. Greetings from Germany. My topic is about the importance of complaint management in attribute-based shopping. So I'm going to have an introduction, then I will tell you the purpose of research and methodology, and finally discussions and conclusion. So what is attribute-based shopping is a concept that is relevant to hospitality industry. So let's say when you want to book a place, let's say a room, you will look at the rate and the room type and you will make your decisions. As soon as you're there, you will notice that there are some features in the room that actually it's not important for you. For example, some of the things that you will see and you're already paying for it, it's not even useful for you. That's the concept that then attribute-based shopping and attribute-based pricing is saying that to set the price in a way that customers only pay for things that has a value for them. So you are not paying for the whole room's features, rather than you just pay for the things that actually you wish to see there or it's important for you. So that's the concept, and from here with attribute-based shopping we can actually go and connect it with complaint management and online reviews. That is very common nowadays. So how I'm connecting these two topics, from looking at the attributes that customers are willing to pay for it, you could imagine that these attributes are important for the customers. That's why they are willing to pay more. So if you identify these attributes, you would understand also that this willingness to pay is also related to the complaint that they may have if the quality of the service that they are paying is not in a satisfactory level. So basically it means that like you have already, by attribute-based shopping, you have already identified the critical points as well, the points that customers, for some reasons, they are sensitive about it. So my argument in this research is that instead of like waiting until the customers comes and stay, for example, in your hotel, and then after leaving, they leave some reviews, bad, let's say, reviews on social platforms and other platforms, and influence future customers in a kind of negative way, with defining actually or using attributes-based pricing strategy, you can already prevent actually the potential complaints for future, because you have already identified sensitive issues, and now you could actually pay more attention to it. So either you prevent it from the beginning by going to attribute-based pricing strategy, or identifying actually these critical features that our customers are willing to pay more by looking at complaints that they are leaving on online platforms. You could create a kind of process, a circle of, for example, a process, let's say ongoing process of taking the complaints into consideration and adjusting actually the pricing system. So that's the main argument here in this research. And this is for the first time that complaint management and attribute-based pricing and shopping has been actually presented in one context. So the research methodology, how I have actually done this research, I did a content analysis on a large amount of actually data. I got this data from I extracted the data from booking.com. It's almost like a 500,000 data, like negative and let's say positive reviews. Of course, since my topic was complaint management, I focused mostly on complaint part, the negative reviews. So I identified a group of hotels in Italy, like 5 stars, and I looked at the reviews that has been written, not by looking at the stars of the hotel or at the evaluations, general evaluations, rather than the text of the complaints that people have left on, let's say, booking.com platform. I used Cervecchio model to identify the different aspects of the service, let's say, quality. For some of you, maybe Cervecchio model is not familiar, so it's a model that has 5 major criteria: reliability, assurance, tangibles, empathy, and responsiveness. So based on this let's say, criteria, I have done an analysis on the content of complaints, and it's kind of very interesting research, because you can imagine that the 500,000 data, actually it's not easy to work on it. But anyway, from this analysis, I figured out that it was a kind of surprise for myself as well, that tangibles, like the physical features of actually hotel, was the most problematic area that majority of customers in a 5-star hotel, they have complained about it. So the conceptual model of this research is a kind of like attribute-based shopping, has impact on customer complaints, and it has also impact on customer satisfaction. So as I told you, after doing this analysis, front desk staff, bathroom issues, room cleanness, and guest room noise issues was the most problematic area that people had complained about it. And that's a kind of like really for 5-star hotels, taking these simple things to actually focus on it and decrease the level of complaints or increase, let's say, the level of satisfaction, that should be absolutely something that they need to put more emphasis on it. So there are a lot of research about like service quality itself, customer satisfaction, complaint management, and online reviews. In this research, I have tried to find a way to, first of all, prevent actually it by making a right actually correlation between the features that people value it and the complaints that they are living because those issues actually are the most important things for them. So this is the first time that actually you see this combination of actually things, concepts in this research. Of course, the findings of research highlights the importance of complaint management, and ultimately it's helping in improving customer satisfaction in hospitality industry. This is actually what could be said as a conclusion. So thank you very much for your attention. Of course, if you have questions, you can send it by email. If you have some ideas that how the research could be done, for example, in our way, or look for some other features, I would be happy to have your feedbacks. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Okay, now, if anybody have any question, please put on the chat box. Now, let's move on to the conference. Now, let's welcome our next presenter, Oste Lechner, Faculty of Business Economics and Management, University of Latvia, Riga, Latvia. And his topic is the knowledge sharing culture in an operational excellence plant as competitive advantage for forward-thinking organization. You may read his abstract from here. Let's see what he wants to share with us. So please share your...
Do we have the screen now, the knowledge sharing, the first one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. That's already a good start. Okay, as I said already, I would like to say thank you for the invitation to this international conference. And I already said it, my name is Horst Lechner, and I'm a student at the University of Latvia in Riga. The title of my paper is also already mentioned, the knowledge sharing culture in an operational excellent plant as competitive advantage for forward-thinking initiatives. It is often said that it is essential to create a knowledge sharing culture as a part of knowledge management initiatives. An isolated knowledge management program looked after by a privileged few only is a... Sorry.
Is this? Is that the meeting?
Is a paradox in itself and will not survive for long. Hello?
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt, sir. I think your network is not working properly.
Yeah, I mean, it's unstable, huh? Is it unstable?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your voice is buffering.
I had already some issues before. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Is it okay now?
Okay, as I started again, it's often said that this is essential to create a knowledge sharing culture as part of a knowledge management initiatives. An isolated knowledge management program looked after by just a privileged few one is a paradox in itself and will not survive for the long term. Only effective collaboration and communication, which spans across the whole plant structure, will give knowledge management the boost it really needs. In order to enrich a company's current culture, I believe that change must start at the individual, each individual person. Every employee has a sphere of influence along with their own individual knowledge. And this is where he or she believes a knowledge-sharing culture can begin. Culture, according to my understanding, is a set of important understandings, often unstated, but the members, my goodness, often unstated, that members of a community share it in common. This shared understanding consists of our norms, values, attitude, beliefs, and paradigms. Another definition given in Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary is culture is the integrated pattern of human behavior that includes thoughts, speech, action, and artifacts, and depends on one's capacity for learning and transmitting knowledge to succeeding generations. The second definition is an exciting one, as increasing one's capacity for learning and transmitting knowledge is one of the prime aims of knowledge management. The concept of the paradigm is an extremely important one in understanding culture. A paradigm is a way of thinking, perceiving, communicating, or viewing the world. It is often called a world view or a mindset. The important point about a paradigm is that it is subconscious and one is not aware of his or her own paradigm. It's rather like thinking the world is colored red, unaware that one is wearing red-tinted contact lenses. Paradigm is a frequently misunderstood and misused word. When someone says we need a new paradigm for this, it is a misuse of the word. All they are saying is we need a new approach or we need a new way of looking at things. Organizational culture can be thought of as a relatively rigid, tacit infrastructure of ideas that shape not only our thinking, but also our behavior and perception of our business environment. It effectively establishes a set of guidelines by which members of an organization work and how those organizations are structured. It is rigid mainly due to our paradigms. We don't recognize why we do so much of what we do. Also, we tend to resist changes rather than embrace it. There are many definitions of knowledge management. A common definition is the collection of processes that govern the creation disseminates in as it is knowledge management to a set of processes. A more useful definition could be knowledge management is a business philosophy. It is an emergent set of principles, processes, structures, technology applications that help people share and leverage their knowledge to meet their business objectives. Today, the creation and application of new knowledge is essential and the survival of almost all businesses. There are many reasons. For instance, intangible products such as ideas or processes, information are taking a growing share of global trade from the economy. For instance, increasingly the only sustainable competitive advantage is continuous innovation. Or for instance, increasing turnover of staff. Or for instance, a problem as an organization is that we don't know what we know. And a final reason, accelerating of change in terms of technology, business, and social changes. What then does it mean to create a knowledge sharing culture? To create a knowledge sharing culture, you need to encourage people to work together more effectively, to collaborate and to share, ultimately to make organizational knowledge more productive. But one needs to remember a few things. For instance, we are talking about sharing information and knowledge, not just information. For instance, we are not doing it for its own sake, or for instance, changing a culture is tough. Not only does it mean change, which has always been tough, It means seeing the world in a different way. It means revealing our hidden paradigm, like the tacit acceptance that knowledge is power. We are told by many of the gurus that the rewards must be put in place to encourage knowledge sharing. I think this is plain crazy. I don't believe you can make people share by overtly rewarding them. Stimulus responses does not work in complex systems. Human beings are motivated by more than just money. The real answer is to help people see for themselves that knowledge sharing is in their very own personal interest. The old paradigm was knowledge is power. Today it needs to be explicitly understood that this sharing knowledge is power. And if people understand that sharing their knowledge helps them to do their jobs more effectively, helps them retain their jobs, helps them in their personal development and career progression, rewards them for getting things done, not for blind sharing, and brings more personal recognition, then knowledge sharing will become a reality. So what are the reasons to share? What should motivate people? Here are a few. For instance, even with the low level of knowledge sharing that goes on today, if you do not make your knowledge productive, then someone else with the same knowledge will. Or for instance, you can almost guarantee that whatever bright ideas you have, someone else somewhere in the organization will be thinking along the same lines. Or for instance, by sharing your knowledge, one gains more than he or she loses. Sharing knowledge is a synergetic process, and one get more out than she or he puts in. Some people object to sharing as they feel that others will steal their ideas and reap the rewards rightly theirs. This is a fallacy. Knowledge sharing isn't about blindly sharing everything, giving away one's ideas, being politically naive, or being open about absolutely everything. One still needs to exercise judgment. If one has a great idea, don't share it with a competitor, external or internal. But on the other hand, don't try to develop it on your own, and don't sit on it for fear of it being stolen from you. You have lots of knowledge of little use to you. Share it with others who can make use of it, and in return, they will share relevant knowledge with you. My personal view is that knowledge sharing starts at the individual. After all, especially if you are a CEO or a mid-level manager, a receptionist or a graduate trainee, for all are still an individual. Each one of us has his or her job set of objectives and sphere of influence. The higher up the organization one is, the more influence one has. Fundamentally, sharing is about being more open in your way of work and in your relationship with other people. And remember, sharing is not just about giving, it's about asking people and telling people. Some people will argue that you do not need technology to implement a knowledge management program. To some extent, they are right. Knowledge management is fundamentally about people, not about technology. But from my understanding, technology plays a crucial transformational role and is a key part of changing the corporate culture to knowledge sharing one. Technology is not all good. However, there are many pitfalls to its effective use. Information overload is just one example. If implemented well and if people are trained and educated in its use, knowledge sharing technology is good. Not only can you find the information and knowledge you need quickly and effectively, but you can post your knowledge on the system for access by others in the organization. Coming to the conclusion already, the most effective way to create a knowledge sharing culture is first to start a practice, first to start to practice it at your level. The higher up the organization, the more effective one will be in changing the culture. But even if he or she are low down the hierarchy, she or he has an influence. Second, put in place the knowledge sharing technology and train education people in its effective way. Kiss. Thank you for your attention. Was there always contact? Internet was okay?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Yes.
Would you like
Say
to
so.
add something?
No, thank you. I know the distance, but this was only a part of my thesis. All the good other presentator, they already had presented parts of their thesis. This is just a bypass of my thesis, just as an excuse.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anybody has any questions or recommendation? Please ask in the chat box, sir will reply. So I request you to please stop your screen sharing.
Is it okay now? Should be off.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
Let's move on to the next.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes, please, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm enjoying your presentation, Mr. Horst. This one, I would like to ask about I understand the knowledge sharing culture after you explained it. How about operational excellence plant? What to do after the knowledge sharing culture implemented, and what is in the operational excellence plan? Is that okay, the question? You didn't get it? Okay, type.
You may put it on your chat box.
Okay. Okay, he can reply to me in the chat box. Thank you. You can continue.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now move to the next. Now let's welcome our next presenter, Susan Christopherson, School of Business, Thomas Jefferson University, Philadelphia, United States, and talk for the conference the market solution to the free rider problem. You may read the episode from here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. I was afraid I was on mute. I'm logged in as Susan.
Please put your camera on.
I'm trying. There we go.
Okay, you want to present live?
Do I want to what?
You want to present live?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. You may start.
Okay. Yeah. I've been pursuing research in economics, and my topic is public goods. So as an economist, there are 3 topics that we don't like to talk about. We don't like to talk about when the market doesn't work. We like to talk about when supply and demand return correct prices, the market supplies people's needs, etc. Resources are used efficiently. But there are 3 areas where we feel that does not happen. One of those is monopoly. One of those is externalities, such as in situations where things are created, such as pollution or bad outcomes. But the third area of market failure is called public goods. Public goods are goods that have 2 very unique characteristics. The characteristics are that they are non-excludable and they are non-rival in consumption. So that means it's a particular type of good. If I eat this cracker, you can't have it. So we would be rival in consumption. A good that's non-rival would mean I can use it and you can use it also. You can go to Singapore and look at that beautiful sky, the beautiful skyscrapers. I can go to Singapore and look at those same beautiful skyscrapers. The enjoyment of you seeing the skyscraper is not diminished by my seeing it. So we're both enjoying the good, as opposed to the cracker. Either I enjoy it or you enjoy it. So public good has to be non-rival in consumption. Another thing, it has to be non-excludable. When that good is provided, you can't keep me from using it, such as a beautiful skyscraper in Singapore. It's gorgeous, it's big. You can't, if I don't pay my taxes, you can't say, no, you can't look at that skyscraper. Only people who paid for it can look at it. Normal goods, you have to pay. If I want a pair of jeans, I have to pay for those jeans before I leave the store. But the enjoyment of a public good, you don't have to pay for, you can't be excluded. So these are goods that the free market does not properly provide because you can't get paid. The classic example of a public good is a skyscraper is more modern, but the traditional example is a lighthouse. Everyone knows we need lighthouses. Everyone knows we don't like ships crashing on the rocks, people die, cargo is lost. Lighthouses are a very good thing. And yet, who is going to build a lighthouse? Me, Joe contractor, entrepreneur, I see an area where boats tend to crash and I think, oh, I should build a skyscraper, but wait, what if people don't pay me? I can't turn the light off when that deadbeat doesn't want to pay me because it's non-excludable. And if there's 2 boats passing or 100 boats passing, the light is equally bright. So a lighthouse is non-rival in consumption. 2 boats or 100 boats can use it. A lighthouse is non-excludable. I can't turn the light off when deadbeats are going by. So the free market will not provide public goods. This creates a role for government. So economists are typically rather libertarian in their thinking. They don't like government involvement. We prefer it when the market can provide the goods we need. But in this case, because of these unique characteristics of non-arrival and non-excludability, the private market will not provide it. The government must provide it. My research centers on the lighthouses that were constructed in the United States before we were a country, when we were a colony of England. So when we were a colony of England, we were not that, it was not that prosperous of an undertaking for England. So we were expensive. Yes, they did get some raw resources from us, but especially once people started moving towards revolution and not wanting to pay taxes, the stamp tax, tea tax, things like that, we were becoming not a really great prospect as a colony. So England was not, that would have been our government, but they would not be likely to build those lighthouses. So I've been researching the 13, I think it was 13 lighthouses that were built while we were a colony. Who built them if our government did not? And Britain did not build them. They had no interest in it. So I've just been looking at various lighthouses. The one I've studied most was the original lighthouse built in the 1300s, 1400s. It was when Spain first discovered Florida, and Florida was a Spanish colony. And why did they, and then they built a lighthouse. So what was the motivation for that? The motivation was that the Spanish wanted to bring Catholicism to the natives in what is now the United States state of Florida. So it was not motivated primarily by a government providing goods to its citizenship. It was actually paid for by private citizens who wanted to bring Catholicism to the natives in Florida. So I've also looked at lighthouses in Georgia. Georgia, the lighthouse was built by a bunch of, they were called the Georgian governors, and they wanted to support plantations in the state of Georgia. And so it was free market people. It was not the government, but it was, they took people who were in poorhouses, and they put them on ships and they sent them to Georgia to work the plantations. So it wasn't really slavery, but it was indentured service. Slavery was illegal in Savannah. So I am not done with this research. This is just the beginning, but I'm looking into the lighthouses that were built prior to us having a government. And I could go on.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your wonderful research.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that's all I have to say for now.
Anybody has any question? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your wonderful research.
Thank you.
Now let's move on to the conference. Now let's welcome our new next presenter, Niti Mirosi, Accounting Department, Halu Olio University, Indonesia. And her topic is Analysis of Capital Structure and Increasing Profitability at Suzuki branch in Indonesia. You may read her abstract from here. Now let's see what she wants to share with us.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The honorable other participant. So, the earlier I will present about capital structure analysis in increasing profitability in Suzuki branch in Indonesia. Here, problem formulation and research objective. So, based on the background, the formulation of the problem raised by researcher in how the capital structure in increasing profitability at in Suzuki branch in Indonesia. So here, based on the main issue above, the purpose of this research is to find out and analysis how the capital structure increasing profitability in Suzuki branch in Indonesia. So, for analyzing the company capital structure, at first we need to know what is the debt to equity ratio. And then what we find for the table about the debt equity ratio in Suzuki branch in Indonesia, as you can see by the financial reporting in Suzuki branch in Indonesia, it shows how much the issue of debt in the composition of capital structure used by in Suzuki branch in Indonesia in 2017 to 2018 decreased from 101.44% to 89.07%, while in 19 it increased to 97.07%. 63%. And again, this decrease because of pandemic, as you can see, when 2020 to 90.28%, and increase in 21 again by 106.89%. Yeah. And the second, debt to assets ratio, from the table by reporting statement, it can be seen how much debt as a capital structure in financial asset owned by Suzuki branch in Indonesia in 2017 to 2018 decreased from 50.86% to 47.11%. In 2018 to 19, it increased for 40%, for 40.11% to 49.40%, and in 2019 to 2020, it decreased from 49.40% to 47.45%. Meanwhile, in 2020 to 2021, the debt to asset ratio has increased from 47.45 to 51 to 0.67%. Analysis company profitability ratio for return of equity. It can be seen as the Suzuki branch in Indonesia in 2017 amounted to 15.02%, and to 2018 amounted to 9.63%, and also 8 to 8.27%, and to 2020 amounted to 10.92%, and to 2021 amounted to 7.64%. This means that the highest ROI was obtained in 2017, which was 15.02%, and the lowest ROI was obtained in 21, which was 7.64%. So for the return of asset, it can be said that in Suzuki branch in Indonesia in 2017 amounted to 7.45%, and in 2018 amounted to 5.09%, and in 2019 amounted to 4.19%, and in 2020 amounted to 5.74%, and in 2021 amounted to 3.69%. This means that the highest return of asset was obtained in 2017, which was 4.45%, and the lowest return of asset was obtained in 21. And it can be concluded that the capital structure owned by the Suzuki branch in Indonesia is still not able to increase its ability to generate profits. Corporate debt, which should be used in investment to increase profit, but most of it is used to finance losses increased by its subsidiaries. The use of this debt raises fixed costs in the form of interest expense that must be borne by the company. The interest expense can reduce the net profit to be received because of the benefit derived by using debt are smaller than the cost incurred. Because for the comparison between capital structure which are not much different, in this case there are several causes that make the amount between the value of debt and equity not too far away, including the lack of equality value in funding in its business, so that the company must increase the value of the debt so that the company funding continues. Beside that, there is a possibility that the company want to reduce the tax burden so that by using debt as company funding. For profitability analysis in Suzuki branch in Indonesia, Excessive use debt in company capital structure also casts the decrease in resulting profitability because the use of debt will cause fixed costs. In the form of interest expense that must be borne by the company, the interest expense can reduce the net profit to be received because of benefit delivered from using debt are smaller than the cost incurred, causing profitability to tend to decrease. So, for the conclusion, based on the result of the analysis and discussion in this study, it can be concluded that the capital structure is still unable to increase profitability at Suzuki branch in Indonesia, which can be seen from the unstable capital structure, causing profit to tend to decrease. This due to a decrease in unit selling price of Suzuki official and losses to several company sub-dealers. The reason that the total value of debt and equality does not differ much is that the company lack if it uses internal fund to finance its business operations, so that they uses internal fund to increase fund, which result in a large amount of debt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ma'am Netri, for the lovely presentation. Would you like to add something?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, let's move on to the next. Now let's welcome our next presenter, Marika Chachubaya, Professor, Hebrew Aramaic Department, 4th Java Kisri, Tbilisi State University, Tbilisi, Georgia. And her topic is the existence of Jews and Christians in the area in which Islam came into being. You may read her abstract from here. Now let's see what she wants to share with us. Ma'am Marika, would you like to share something? You want to present live? I request.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Unfortunately, I can't, I have some problems with video. I don't know, that's not because of me. It depends on what, I don't know. But anyway, I'll try and I'll begin. The significance of the Syriac culture on the formation of Islam at an early stage is not studied well. The contemporary researchers of Islam state the existence of Jews and Christians in the area in which Islam came into being, but almost nothing is known in this respect about the sources depicting Syriac people's history of religion and culture. The first stage of converting to Muslim religion started in the 9th century, which can clearly be seen in the apologetic works of the Syriac writers of the early Islamic period. Analysts depicted Arab conquests in the chronicles and expressed their viewpoints about how Islam came into being and the principal doctrines. The commentators of the Bible evidently paid attention to the issues of Islam teachings, which were significant to them. There were created apocalyptic tractates, and Islam's hegemonic role was defined. There were also apologetic and polemic tractates in the Syriac language devoted to the Christians and Muslims' arguments on religion. Islam pressured Christian writers to bring into system and in a short, compact way to express their own traditional exegesis of the Holy Scripture. From this point of view, the work of Theodor Barkoni, the researcher of the Oriental Church of the early 8th century, is significant. He wrote a work, Salient, about the doctrine of his church in the form of the profound comments on the Bible. It's a response of the Christians to be dispute on the Christian doctrine which the Muslims held in the late 8th century. Theodor Barkoni's definition of the Muslims is significant. The Syriac writers continued creating apologetic and polemic texts in the Islamic environment, even after the beginning of the Christian Kalam in Arabic, when Christian writers coexisting with Islam created opposing theology, known as of Nezebis. The dispute with the Muslims is expressed in the work of the Syriac Orthodox scholar Bar Salibi, in which numerous data of Muslim history and philosophical ideas of different schools are preserved. The above-mentioned works are unique among the medieval Christian works about Islam. The limitations of modern scholars may be largely responsible for this state of affairs rather than any disinclination to study Islam from the point of view of the methods of Religionsgeschichte. Few are the Islamists who have any skill in Syriac, let alone any sure grasp of the religious history and culture of the speakers of Aramaic more generally. And few too are the Syriac scholars whose comment of Arabic and knowledge of early Islam is adequate to requirements of comparative study in this area. But this was not the case with the Syriac-speaking writers of the Oriental churches from the 8th through the 13th centuries who lived in the world of Islam. They have left behind not only accounts of Islam's origin, but a number of fascinating works which had it as their purpose of defend the Christian faith in the face of religious challenges coming from Muslims, and to attempt to stem the tide of conversation to Islam. It is of the purpose of the present communication to give a hurried overview of this literature. Aside from the occasional brief allusion, notice of the rise and religious challenge of Islam does not for the most part appear in Christian texts, be they Greek, Syriac, or Arabic, much before the early years of the 8th century. By this time, of course, the Arab conquest was long over and the first surge of creative energy was underway. The dramatic building programs set underway at this time with the Dome of Rock in Jerusalem and the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus made the point dramatically. Both monuments symbolize not only the Islamic appropriation of the conquered territories, but they embody the religious challenge to Jews and Christians as well, since both buildings were literally founded on the sites of earlier religious structures and both loudly proclaimed the Islamic Shahada in the land. As Umayyad power gave way to the confident new Abbasid dynasty in the mid-8th century, the conditions were already well in place for the full political and social consolidation of the new Islamic Commonwealth. For the socially upwardly mobile elements in the subject Christian communities, the pressure to convert to Islam thereafter became overwhelming. The historians' chronicles were the ones who gave brief accounts of the rise of Islam and who occasionally furnished a thumbnail portrait of Muhammad. But for the most part, their narratives concentrated on recording current events as they impact on the Christian communities. And in this connection, they seldom failed to mention the disabilities and hardships inflicted in the subject of populations by the Muslim masters, all the while taking note of the peculiarities of their rule. It is clear that for the most part, the historians considered the coming of Islamic rule as a punishment which God allowed to fall upon his people for their sins. In no way can one find in their chronicles any evidence for the thesis sometimes advanced by modern scholars that the Syriac-speaking Christians welcomed the Arab invasion and the Islamic conquest as a liberation from the oppressive fiscal and theological policies of Byzantine rule. It is true that large segments of the population were considered to be monophysite or Nestorian heresies by the Byzantine government, but in text emanating from the Syrian Orthodox or Church of the East communities themselves, one finds hostility not so much to Byzantine rule in principle, nor the desire for a unity of faith among all the patriarchs and language communities. Rather, the concern to the degree that is anti-Byzantine at all is with the perceived heresy and malfeasance in offense of the actual Byzantine rules, both civil and ecclesiastic. Contrariwise, there is nothing necessarily anti-Byzantine or anti-Roman in the occasional remark in favor of Arabs, such as the one attributed to the Patriarch Shoyab III, writing to his correspondent Simeon of Rev Ardashir around the year 650. In the heart of the inter-Christian controversy of the time, he said, as for Arabs to whom God has this time given rule, sultana in Arabic, over the world, you know well how they act towards us. Not only do they not oppose Christianity, but they prize our faith, honor the priests and signs of our Lord, and give aid to the churches of monasteries. Perhaps the earliest Syriac writers to take account of the Islamic hegemony in religious language were those who sought to make sense of the conquest and occupation of the Arabs in terms of prophecies of the Book of Daniel. They wrote in the apocalyptic vein one would expect of anyone who took this cue from Daniel. The most well-known such work is so-called Apocalypse of Pseudo-Methodius, which was first composed in Syriac and which was subsequently translated into Greek and Latin and a number of other European languages. According to its most recent editor, Reining, the text was first composed during the reign of the Caliph Abdul Malik around the years 691, 692. The author of this apocalypse is now completely unknown, but over the course of time, the work has come to be attributed to a certain Methodius of Patara, who is said to have been both a bishop and a martyr. In fact, the Syrian author relies heavily on earlier works of Syriac, such as the Cave of Treasures, the Alexander Legend, and the Julian Romans. His thesis is that in due course, after a time of tribulation, God will set the world's affairs right, and at the end of time, the emperor of the Romans will restore the Christian religion and its symbol, the cross in Jerusalem, and he will hand the converted world over to Christ at his second coming. To explain how this event will come about, the author weaves a somewhat complicated scenario which invokes the apocalyptic vision of history set forth in the book of Daniel, involving the fate of the four kingdoms of Medes, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans, adjusted now to take account of the rule of the Arabs. The apocalyptic genre persisted in Syriac in later times, was even combined with other types of apologetical polemical writing, such as the Syriac account of the renegade Christian monk Sarkis Bahara, who is said to have been Muhammad's teacher. It had its root in the patristic traditions of the exegesis of the biblical book of Daniel, such as had already been in vogue in the Syriac-speaking world since at least as early as the time of Saint Fred. The earliest Syriac dispute text in Islamic milieu may well be the report from the early 8th century, which purposes to be an account of the interrogation of Patriarch John III of Antioch by a Muslim emir, now securely identified as Umar as-Sadal al-Anbari. But the most well-known early dispute text is undoubtedly the one which contains Patriarch Timothy's account of the replies he says he gave to the questions the Caliph al-Mahdi put to him on the occasion of two consecutive audiences the Patriarch had with the Caliph. The questions all had to do with the standard topics of conversation between Muslims and Christians on religious matters. What excites me about the Syriac work of Christian apology in the Islamic milieu is how much it seems to anticipate the apologetical methods that appear in the more popular Arab Christian apologetical texts that were composed from 9th century onward. In particular, in many details, it foreshadows, if that be the correct verb, discussions on finds in the Arabic work of Theodore Abukura, who wrote very much within the Syriac-speaking milieu. If the work, in fact, comes from the first quarter of the 8th century, as its author suggests, it goes together with other Syriac texts we have mentioned here, texts produced in the 8th century, which in the ensemble can then be seen as already determined in large part the stance Christian would take toward Islam in Arabic, and the apologetical strategies they would develop when the conversation was taken up in Arabic by Muslims and Christians alike in the 9th century. Of course, Syriac writers continued to write apologetical and polemical texts in the Islamic milieu even after the beginning of Christian kalam in Arabic, when Christian writers accommodated themselves to the Islamic way of doing controversial theology. A typical Christian thinker who wrote in Syriac in the 9th century and whose apologetical method was very much on the order of that of the contemporary Muslim Mutakalamun was Nonus of Nezebis. He was a bilingual writer with works in both Syriac and Arabic to his credit. He wrote in the service of the Syrian Orthodox community, whose characteristic teachings he energetically defended not only against Muslims, but against Melkites and Nestorians as well. The work in which he addressed himself to the intellectual challenge of Islam is a Syriac treatise. On internal literary critical grounds, one must date the composition to a point between 950 and 850 and 870. It is an apologetical essay on the themes of monotheism, the doctrine of the Timothy, and doctrine of the incarnation. What strikes the reader almost immediately is the fact that while Nonus writes in Syriac and therefore for Christian eyes alone, he nevertheless expresses his thinking very much in the idiom of the Muslim Mutakallimun of his days. His work clearly shows how by the second half of the 9th century, Christian theology in the world of Islam, even in Syriac, had become thoroughly acculturated to the intellectual milieu of the Muslims. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Thank you, Ma'am Marika, for the wonderful presentation. And thank you. I would like to request everyone to please put your cameras on. I would like to request everyone, please put your cameras on. We would like to have one picture with you all, so please put your cameras on. You all have to just smile, just give a little smile. It's done. Thank you so much. Now, so that's the end of our conference, and thank you very much for your wonderful presentation, for your valuable time. We are so glad to have you all here and we'll hope to see you soon. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.